Hello, 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 Twitch chat. Welcome to the March Nova Cup. I hope you're all ready for some awesome games of Legion TD2. And I'm very, very pleased to announce that with me casting today, we have an actual professional caster. It's the fake one, GG. Some of you might know him from a small little indie game called, is it League of something?
Legends.
Legends, okay,
Just
right.
like me. Legends.
Legends like yourself, okay. I think I've heard of it before. I mean, unfortunately, I couldn't get a Dota caster on the stream today, but nobody's perfect. So here we are, the fake one. Welcome to the stream, dude. Hello.
Welcome, welcome. It's nice to finally be here. I've considered this opportunity like multiple times, but I've never
Awesome.
messaged you, and you ended up messaging me about it. So
I mean, I was nervous. I'm like a
no, you shouldn't.
I'm like a teenager before prom. You know, I'm approaching a professional here to try and see if you can join me on my little amateur cast.
Wait. Did you say teenager before prom? Where are my flowers then?
They're in the mail. They're in the mail.
Yeah, I haven't
Brexit,
received
you know,
them yet.
it's all Brexit fault. It's so
Oh,
difficult
yeah.
shipping these days.
Yes. The postman is certainly late then.
It's rough, man. It's rough. But hey, enough about flowers, because we've got some pretty cool games ahead of us today. So for the first match, we have Drakir and FC Lucy. So a team that probably need no introduction. They've won the Nova Cup more times than I've had hot dinners, mainly because I'm British and we basically eat crap. And they are up against Fine and Mr. Buzz. So two players
My
who...
homie.
Yeah.
My homie, fine. So you know who I'm rooting for in this game.
It's got to be Fine, right?
Yeah, certainly have to root for Fine, right?
Yeah.
Although Drakir has been very nice to me and always supportive. I'm sorry, Drakir, to say this, but obviously I'm rooting here for Fine. Although it will be a hard match for them, that's for sure.
Oh, for sure. I think it's fair to say that the underdogs, that is Drakir and Lucy, they're going to have a chance here today. You know, they
Yeah, just tiny.
a small
tiny
chance. They've got
Yeah.
they're fighting an uphill battle for sure. It is Fine and Mr. Boz after all, but you know, I wouldn't rule them out just yet. I think Drakir and Lucy might surprise us all.
Yeah, knowing them, they probably have an ace up their sleeve. Just one or maybe two aces. But yeah, certainly, jokes aside, I think this should not be a very hard match for them, given not only their skill, which is obviously something that you see pretty much every day on the ladder, but also knowing their experience in this game and in the pro scene. Like, it's been since I've started playing Legion TD2, so probably, I think, let's say a year and a half ago, maybe something like that. Those guys have been dominating the Nova Cups along with Abrazier. So obviously, they're one of the teams that you really don't want to hit in the first round, right? Like, I think Fine and Buzz probably wanted to hit anyone else than Abrazier or Drakir and Lucy.
Possibly true, but with the new Division 1 format, they can afford to lose a series, right?
Yep.
So even if they start off with a really hard matchup here against Drakir and Lucy, they will always, you know, assuming that they somehow don't manage to win, they will always have that second chance in the losers matchup, you know, so they're not necessarily straight out of the tournament just because they drop around. And I really like the way that dynamic works, you know, giving teams a bit of a fair chance. It doesn't all come down to seeding in the first round, you know, it just makes things a bit more fair, a bit more interesting as well for all the teams.
Yes, that's for sure. I mean, seeding is still very important thing in Division 1. I guess maybe it's not as important in the lower divisions, right? But for Division 1, it's extremely important to have the high seeding, and it was actually quite interesting this edition because there have been a lot of last minute signups. For a while, it was basically 2 or 3 of the very common Division 1 teams, and then some very crazy matchups, but last minute, so many signups, and we've got ourselves a couple of really decent and dangerous teams.
Yeah, for sure. I think maybe I was a little bit concerned yesterday when like the Division 1 cutoff was around 2,000 elo, and I thought this might be a bit rocky. Entirely my fault for scheduling the Cup over the Easter weekend, I suppose. Didn't realise there were so many devout Christians in the Legion TD community, but there we go. And but we did have a bunch of last-minute sign-ups, and I think the quality of the teams has got up to more or less the usual standard now, and we should have some pretty high-caliber games for sure.
I just tuned I just tuned into the stream to see what you put as my description,
Oh,
and I
yeah.
actually got the professional caster shout. Let's go! This is where
And actually
7
an
years of
amateur clown.
experience. It was a catalyst. My my League of Legends career, not relevant. It was all a catalyst to become a Legion TD2 caster and have the description of a professional caster.
Well, hey, look, I'm just glad, really, that I could help improve your career and bring it to the natural next level. So all of those years that you spent casting League of Legends at the world stage and all of that stuff. Have you done live casts, by the way, for worlds and stuff?
No, unfortunately, we have not been able to like book a spot in the arena since it's very expensive.
But a bunch of like studio work for sure.
Yeah, studio work, yeah, on like daily basis. But we've also done LAN events. Unfortunately, none of like the big ones. I've been to Worlds and LEC finals and MSIs as a part of the team doing live interviews and such, but never cast on site, which is actually incredible. So
yeah,
I missed that opportunity. Maybe for Legion, right?
Well, now you're in the big leagues, my man. So you've gone from all of that previous experience, and now you're here in my bedroom casting Legion. So it's all been worth it.
Circumstances, I think,
all been worth
it. The beautiful, perfect circumstances could have been better.
Hey, we have a lobby open, by the way. Let me see if I can invite you into here.
Yeah. Let's go.
All right.
We have been talking about it just a tiny bit before, but Drakir and Lucy, obviously, the usual suspects, and Fine and Mr. Boss against them. To be fair, we all know that this is a fairly one-sided affair in theory, obviously, and even looking at the ranks, right? But what is the percentage chance you would give to Fine and Mr. Boss to take him down, to take Lucy and Drakir down here? Is it more like 10, 20%, or would you give him more?
I probably wouldn't go as low as 10 or 20. I would maybe give them around 30%. Mr. Boz, known as a bit of an unconventional player in particular, he might catch these guys off guard. But guys, this is enough chatting, because it seems the players are not messing about. They want to get straight into game number 1. So here we go. March, Nova Cup, game 1. Let's go.
Let's go. And we, off the bat, see some aggressive options in terms of the power-ups. We have the All-Out Assault and the Giant Snails. So certainly a good game to go with more offensive masterminds, and already we see Lucy with the Cartel, Fine with his all-time favorite YOLO, and they're all... It's definitely not as bad as it could be with YOLO, right?
That's a really solid YOLO roll, actually. He has Gatling gun opener with Gargoyle for 3, but he's actually going for a Tempest Gargoyle start instead, which seems weird, because that looks like a really strong gun opener to me.
Yeah, certainly. I love playing gun with Gargoyles and the Wolves. I think those are one of the best units you can get for the early game. You certainly can push with those units, and given the nature of this lobby with the power-ups and you know that they are probably going to pick early game masterminds and snowbally masterminds as well. So I would consider opening with gun, but this is certainly a start that also leaves some room for flexibility with the Doggos and with the Gargoyles. I think those units are probably one of the best units for the early game anyway, no matter what you play.
Yeah, for sure. And like you were saying with the Legion spells there, we do see double cash out, one for each team, and we see Cartel as well on Lucy, which is not only, I would say, her strongest mastermind, but also possibly the best in the game for those super aggressive Wave 11 spells like All Out Assault.
Oh, yeah. That's for sure. Cartel, I think, just a mastermind that in certain scenarios can allow you to have a completely different game to pretty much anyone else. But looking at the roles, I want to highlight Drakir's role, because I think it's fairly early game focus. If you look at the Chain Fist into Harpy with the Warg and Steed to support the whole build early game, I think this could be one of the players that we're going to be looking at a lot to see how he's doing. 6 work is already on wave 2, so probably a lot of aggression to come out from him.
Yeah. And they both snail here as well from Drakir and Lucy, but Mr. Boz is overbuilding to counter that, and so is Fine. So they're both just getting free 6 gold here, which is pretty juicy. And talking about the rolls, by the way, have you seen Mr. Buzz? He has the Spectral Scallywag, he has the Tree of Life. This is a combo that's been pretty problematic, I think, on the ladder lately. So we'll have to see if Buzzy Boy can turn this one into an advantage or not.
So this is pretty interesting, right? Because obviously this is a build that requires some resources to make it happen, because you obviously need the Pirate Boy, then you need to tree him up so he's extremely tanky, and with the healing from the...
Tree of Life?
Sorry?
The Tree of Life.
No, I meant the...
Oh, the Pilgrim.
Wander, yeah, the Pilgrim. Yep. Thank you very much. Yeah, so with the healing of the Pilgrim, you can be extremely obnoxious on wave 7, wave 8. Obviously, those are the waves that are a bit later into the game, rather than the whole set of early game waves where you don't have that power yet. So I'm wondering if this is going to be Fine's and Mr. Buzz's plan to maybe play around those mid-game waves and try to do some starving, because obviously for Drakir and Lucy you kind of want to send every wave and look for longer waves to get your income going with the early game masterminds.
Yeah. And Mr. Buzz looks like he's trying to punish that early game aggression here. We do see the first power mercenary of the game. It is a Robert on wave 3. Drakir's doing extremely well though. Remember, he was 6 workers on wave 2 already. And he's only leaking the Robert and a very low HP Frog here. So I think he's perfectly happy with that result.
Oh, yes, that's for sure. And it's 7 workers already. Maybe he'll go 8, but what's most important is that it's -2 gold for Mr. Buzz, right? That's
minus 2 income, so it's -2 gold every wave for the rest of the game.
Yeah, and that's certainly something unpleasant for Mr. Buzz, because if you take the risk and send a Power Merc early, like an early Brute or an early Robo now that they have been added, you really want to get some value out of it. And I don't think the leak on Drakir was actually worth it. And it created a longer wave, which obviously is not perfect for Fine and Mr. Buzz, since they were lower workies than Drakir and Lucy. So they sort of get more value out of it. And look at Lucy's Mythium, by the way, already.
Yeah, she's cringing pretty well there. Having said that, though, Mr. Buzz does have the worker lead. He's up to 8 workers now, really starting to abuse the early game power of the Spectral Scallywag. Like, I think he's playing this pretty well so far. He just needs to not leak the entire wave on 5 now.
And that could be an issue. If Lucy decides to go for Brutes or Robos, this could actually end up leaking. I mean, obviously, the Pilgrim is going to help a lot, but still... that's not going to be easy. And the imps come out. Yeah, the imps come out, but more... I want to point out as well, Drakir just held the robot resend on wave 4. He's now on 10 workers. Mr. Buzz -4 income as well. I think this early game is really going in favour of... I mean, I'm going to try and pronounce this team name, but this is a challenge. Barnes Kieran? Yeah, I think that's... I mean, obviously my Norwegian or whatever language is not good, but I think that sounds... I would believe you, know? It's plausible at least, right? Yes, certainly. That's for sure. Alright, so this 120 Mythium send into Mr. Buzz. He did not get the Pilgrim down, so he's counting on that Treant. It does have the full 20% buff, but it is not going to be enough. This will be a pretty big leak on him. Yeah, that is not looking hot. And considering the fact that he already sent Power Mercs, look at his income already. Yeah. So behind Drakir and Lucy. 60 on Drakir, 64 on Lucy, 38 on Mr. Buzz. And even though he has some Mythium saved up, he leaks quite a bit here. So this is going to be problematic, because obviously you have cash out, you want to accrue their early game advantage, you want to use the fact that you have more gold to maybe create a worker lead. But not only you're sort of behind in workers because you leaked and you're saving Mythium and your income is not as high, but you now find yourself in a situation where you're taking king damage in wave 5. This is really not ideal. And it's not tiny king damage either. They've lost 10% HP just to that leak on Mr. Buzz there, wave 5. So that's massive, actually. If you look at the win chance, Jules is giving Barnes Kieran a 64% chance to take the game now, which probably would be what I gave them on wave 1, to be honest. So, so now evening the odds, right? Yeah, evening the odds, exactly. Now, we have some pretty big sends coming out here on wave 6 against both Drakir and Lucy. Mr. Buzz did go for income only, though, so Drake, Snail here. And Drakir with the Zeus should do very well, if not just hold. Lucy, though, she receives a double Brute there from Fine. However,
She has got 2 Devilfish, which is the perfect tank on wave 6.
You know, the funny thing called value, I think Lucy has got enough of it on this wave.
Good God, yeah.
695 on wave 6. This is absolutely crazy. And look at the Drakir hold as well. Oh my lord, this is really, really going south. And we were talking about it before. Aggressive masterminds, aggressive openers as well, at least from Drakir, obviously. 6 workers on wave 2, and it's paying off absolutely massively. 14 workers already on wave 7, holding pretty much
both
every
of
wave
them.
outside of the the wave 3 league, right? Which was pretty marginal. Absolutely beautiful on their side.
Yeah, this is crazy. 14 workers both. Fine and Mr. Buzz are not exactly slouching, though. 12 workers each, but it's not enough to keep pace with Drakir and Lucy. There is another Robo resend here from Mr. Buzz. He seems to have some sort of addiction here.
And this is going to mean big troubles on wave 8 or wave 9, depending on where Drakir and Lucy want to send. I think it's wave 8, right?
Looking at their builds, I could see either working. Now, Lucy would have to send a lot to leak Mr. Buzz on wave 8 because he'll have the Tree of Life Scally combo. On wave 9, though, that might be a different story, especially because she would have easily north of 200 Mythium by then.
Yep, and Fine's build doesn't look extremely hot next. So I think very good of Drakir to send here. Try to look maybe for the leak, maybe just the income and resend with Lucy on wave 9 because... yeah, Mr. Buzz, and he's probably going to think about the wave 8 send, so he's probably going to try and protect for this wave, but that will leave him extremely vulnerable from wave 9.
Lucy actually going for the income send here as well, though. This could be a bit of an error on the side of Barnes Kieran, because this really gives Mr. Buzz the breathing room that he needs. He'll easily hold this. There is no income send that is going to leak Scallywag Tree of Life combo on wave 8. It will create a very long wave, but Mr. Buzz is going to be more than fine here. And Fine as well. Talking about more than fine. Fine should do quite okay against the Income King send from Drakir. So large amounts of Mythium, but no real threat, I don't think. The one positive, though, is that Fine and Mr. Buzz both spent their Mythium here as well, where if they had held their nerve, they might have posed a real threat on wave 9.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And I think it's actually interesting because you see Gargos on both boards for Fine and Mr. Buzz, so you can sort of expect that they will upgrade at least one of those Gargoyles into Green Devils, and if they do so right on wave 8, they will be extremely weak on wave 9. But I don't think Drakir and Lucy were in a position that they needed to risk it. I think being as ahead as they were, you can just Income King and you sort of maintain your advantage, right? Like, it's still a very solid position for them.
Oh, for sure, for sure. I felt like it seemed for the first few waves at least that the game plan was for Lucy to just Giga enable Drakir because she was starving a little bit against Mr. Buzz. You know, she sent him the big send on wave 5. And then I think if she could have afforded to skip wave 8, Mr. Buzz would have just leaked massively on 9 to like a 4 Eyes, for example, which she would have had the Mythium for.
Yeah, but it still doesn't look too good on 10. For Mr.
Yeah, that's true. The regen is much less powerful on 10.
Yeah, and Drakir and Lucy have saved their Mythium, like good human, respectable human gamers.
Yeah, respectable gamers, yeah.
And on the other hand, Fine and Mr. Buzz have just Income Kinged, which allows Drak and Lucy to push a bit. And look at the sense. It's a Mimic with a Brute. It's an Ogre, perfectly in income. So, yeah, that looks like King damage, right?
This should, in fact, be King damage, yeah. Fine is heavily undervalue. Mr. Buzz is about 200 undervalue as well when he finishes building. And the Mimic is just really strong against pretty much everything on Mr. Buzz's board there.
And you know what's the worst part is that even if Fine and Mr. Buzz do well here, they can't really push that much either because Drakir and Lucy have more workies and both All Out Assault and Giant Snails are fairly good into the opposite board. So you kind of need to take the leak here, probably take the leak here, and you can't even get much out of it. You can't even push too much. You can't even try to go for a counter punch. So that's certainly not a good situation for them. This is going to be painful, and this could also mean mind games on the Lucy and Drakir side, right? Because They could just take Sacrifice, try to scale, try to look for a wave that the enemy is going to be weak on. Maybe wave 14, given the Fire Lord, all the natural units on Finesport.
Yeah, I think the income resend here is a very good play from Drakir
Yeah.
and Lucy. They don't need to risk it. They're really far ahead after this massive leak on 10. And worth pointing out as well, I don't know if you kept your eyes on that Mimic, but 20 gold picked up on wave 10 by a Mimic. That's really fortunate there for Lucy. You don't often get the Mimic getting the last hits over the boss, but it killed nearly everything in Mr. Buzz's lane.
Yeah, it is kind of crazy because it is obviously just the best send in terms of typings, because Mimic has a lot of pierce damage, but it also can net you a fair amount of gold on many of the waves. 10 is usually not one of them, so this is really a perfect scenario for Drakir and Lucy. And as I've been saying, this is such a tricky spot because you have to sort of overbuild, sort of expect the potential resend on Fines and Mr. Buzz's side, but at the same time, you really don't want to end up overbuilding and getting income sent and just like snowballed on, right? Which is what is happening right now.
Yeah, I mean, right now, Drakir and Lucy are just absolutely pulling away with the game in terms of income. They both have 100 income more than their opponents. They're both on fire here, wave 11. Their king's on full health. Everything is going the way of Barnes Kieran, apart from the pressure, which currently is in favour of Fine and Mr. Buzz. So despite them being behind in workers this whole time, they are now taking the lead, and they have a decent chunk of Mythium in the bank now. 400 on Fine, nearly 400 on Mr. Buzz. It just comes down to when they want to spend that, and it has to be successful. They're really all in now. They've been saving for a long time. They're massively behind in income gold. And when they decide to spend, it has to get a big leak against Drakir and Lucy, because if it doesn't, the game is more or less over.
Yeah, absolutely. It has to be a good hit as well. Not even considering the percentages that Jules is giving us. It's just take a look at the force and you can see it's going to be so hard to find a weak wave for Drakir and Lucy, especially now that Drakir just dropped the Millennium on wave 12, so that protects his 13 and his 14 fairly well, and he has the sacrifice in case he needs it. And same goes for Lucy, right? You can see Hellgate, Ocean Templar, Berserker. This is not a board that you want to send 13, but at the same time it means that finally Mr. Buzz will have to go 14, 15.
Ooh, this is a bit of a juicy pro leak here from Mr. Buzz, though, so extending the wavelength. However, if they don't want to send 13, like you say, then maybe it's not ideal.
Yeah, this is really rough because it's hard to make a decision when do you want to send. As I said before, 13 really doesn't look great.
They can't. There's just no way. They can 13 into like Zeus,
and
Doomsday.
You can even look at the values. It's almost 3k value on wave 13, so even if the boards were not as good as they are, that would still be a fairly hard challenge to leak him solidly here. So what do you do in this situation, Penny? Do you go 14 and try to sort of pray for a leak, since, yeah, Fatalizer and Hellgate, not the greatest on 14?
So I feel like their plan was 14 from the start, like from, say, wave 10 or 11. They probably already called 14. Now things are a bit tricky, though, because Drakir showed this Doomsday machine, which is obviously perfect on wave 14, like the best unit in the game, pretty much. And they received another income send here, so maybe now Buzz and Fine are thinking wave 15, but I wouldn't be surprised if they send 14 anyway, just because they're already completely committed to the play.
And look how starved the game is for them. Drakir and Lucy are constantly upping their income, and they also income breaking. Like at this point, Fine and Mr. Buzz are just not keeping up with the tempo of the game. And this is such a sad situation because there was no good wave to send, but on the other hand...
Oh, here we go though, here comes the send! It's double Needler from Fine, it's Needler double Ghost Knight from Buzz. And I do like the play here. Drakir and Lucy, they go for a full send here on 14, because then if Fine and Buzz skip here, they're dead. But they do send, and the send is massive coming out from Fine and Mr. Buzz. I mean, these are close to 1,000 Mythium into both lanes of Drakir and Lucy, so we'll have to see how they do here. This is going to be clutch.
Yeah, those are some insane sends, but at the same time, look at Drakir's board. It's double Doomsday, and he also has some Arcane tanks, and the Harpy is going to do a very good job taking down the Ghost Knights. This looks like a very good board to hold. Maybe a bit less on Lucy's side, so certainly watching those two lanes. If there's any chance for Fine and Mr. Buzz, it has to be a strong leak on both players, preferably.
Right. I mean, Drakir's already nearly cleared the entire wave. He's basically on value there, just minus 35. And yeah, he's easily holding. He'll have a full HP Doomsday alive in mid. Speaking of mid, I don't know if there'll even be a mid to talk about because Lucy is holding her lane as well. Wow. I feel like Fine and Mr. Boz can just type /FF already because this game is donezo.
This is Jover. This is absolutely Jover. And as we've been saying, there was really not a good wave. But what's the alternative? Saving until you die and you save Mythium for the next game?
Yeah,
I think
right.
this is just an impossible situation. You found yourself so deep down below the opponent that you sort of had to make a risky decision. This was one of them. Saving long, trying to look for a weak wave. You haven't found your weak wave, so you take the risk. You send 14. You don't get the leaks. And as a certain Swedish gamer would say, unlucky.
Unlucky. Yeah, this is really rough now. I think maybe they had to try and force it on 15, but then they would have both just leaked really hard on 14 because remember, Lucy and Drakir did go for a full send there. But yeah, I think honestly, the mistake was just made earlier. They leaked way too much on wave 10 because they skipped there. And then they were just committed into this really all-in play on wave 14. And like we say, if it doesn't work, it's pretty much over. And if you look at the win chance now, Jules giving 87% to Drakir and Lucy. And honestly, I think he's being very, very optimistic there because this game feels all but done.
Yeah, that's extremely generous towards Fine and Mr. Buzz. And look at the comfortable position that Drakir and Lucy are in. Drakir is just extremely overbuilt. He's 400 over. Lucy has pushed quite a lot to leak Mr. Buzz. But at this point, I think we can safely assume that this is going to be Drakir and Lucy take this one down. So I want to use this time and ask you a question because I think it also comes down to, let's say, the mentality, the strategy that was implied here by Fine and Mr. Buzz. Because you can see that obviously, Drakir has had a very aggressive start, a very aggressive opener, and Mr. Buzz has been trying to punish that by sending the robots. It seemed to me like from the start, Fine and Mr. Buzz were feeling some sort of pressure to make a play happen, to look for an advantage in another way than just getting your income and building well, right? It felt from the start like the game is all about trying to break Lucy and Drakir from the early game, try to maybe look for a mistake on their side, but if you don't get those mistakes, you just end up starving yourself so hard with the minus income from the Pyramercs.
Right. And I think this is actually a pretty common... I'll call it a mistake. It's not necessarily a mistake. I think it's a pretty common scenario that you see when you have a one-sided matchup. So when you have one team that's really favoured against the other, not just in Nova Cup, but on the ladder as well, you find that the lower elo team will quite often go for these kind of all-in plays, right? Because they feel like they are unfavoured, perhaps rightly so, but they feel like they're unfavoured, and they just try to force something. So they go for these power mercenaries every wave. They tend to starve a lot more than the higher elo team and stuff like this. And, you know, sometimes it can work. If the higher elo team has no answers for the wave they send on, if they make a mistake, whatever, then it can work and the lower elo team can have a kind of miracle victory there. But, 9 times out of 10 it pans out like this, where the higher elo team holds the send and the lower elo team falls further and further behind with the negative income. And yeah, speaking of which, it looks like we have a GG here on wave 17. Boz and Fine, they were just not able to hold against these mammoth sends from Lucy and Drakir. And yeah, the game is over. Wave 17. GG.
Rightly called here by Mr. Buzz. It's obvious that they're absolutely dead here. And I think the important note to take from this game is what we have just been talking about. I think it's a common strategy, as you said. I've been a victim of it myself many times where I play into those try-hard duos. You know, there's this guy very rampant on the ladder for duoing. He's called Pennywise. He's often duoing with Burnt Dustbroth or Green Spirit, and he's always sniping those lower elo players and taking advantage of them. So I have found myself a victim of this strategy, and I know that you feel the inclination to brute every wave. Oh, I'm going to catch them. And this is a lot of cope. I know that it's a lot of cope, but it's often the mindset that you have in those games. And it's hard to sort of remind yourself, okay, I'm actually a capable player myself. I can look for just a normal type game. Let's call it that way. But here, I think the strategy was, let's cheese it up a bit. Let's look for the robos. And unfortunately, it has not paid off.
Yeah, I think it's a trap that you can often fall into, where you just hyperfixate on trying to break the opponent's lane. And especially, like we've just said, especially when it's a kind of one-sided matchup. You think, okay, this is a high-elo player, I can't let them have a free game, I'm going to starve, I'm going to send robos and brutes and hermits, and 9 times out of 10 it just doesn't work. 9 times out of 10 you starve yourself out of the game and fall further and further behind. But 1 time out of 10 you might win 30 elo, so...
So what would you say? Obviously, we don't know the power-ups yet, and we don't know the masterminds, which will obviously decide the course of the game, probably. But what would you say is the strategy that you would like to see from Fine and Mr. Buzz in game number 2? Because obviously this... yeah, I won't lie, this was a stomp, okay? This was a very one-sided affair. They had the lead from the early waves, not really in danger at any point, and speedrun to Division 1 certainly failed with their plan of trying to put pressure. So what would you say would be the recipe for game 2? Do you try to run it back and just more brutes? Maybe it was not enough brutes here. Or do you go for something more elaborate, like, I don't know, a Fiesta Cartel type of scenario? Obviously, that depends on
I would love to see a Fiesta Cartel, actually, and just go for that kind of high-risk, high-reward gameplay, because they are unfavoured. I think that's completely fair to say to Fine and Mr. Buzz. They are unfavoured in this matchup. Drakir and Lucio, way higher elo, way higher peak elo as well. They just are favoured in this heads-up match. But
it's over 200 difference in the seeding points.
Right, exactly. But if they go for some kind of high-risk, high-reward, like a Cartel Fiesta, and they roll, Pixie Fiesta or something else, they just have a really, really strong early game, then things can start to get a bit weird for Drakir and Lucy, and they can keep them guessing and all the rest of it. Although, if they go for more kind of conventional gameplay, so something, again, like the cash out that we've just seen, maybe Greed, something a bit more vanilla, then I think they need to just focus a bit more on their own lanes and less on Drakir's lane, less on Lucy's lane.
Yeah.
So let's not send robos every wave so that we're just minus 10 income by the time we get to wave 5. Let's just go for a bit of income, a bit of king, take things a bit steady, and, send 1, maybe 2 waves if you're feeling spicy. Exactly. Very wise words indeed. But yeah, I think like Boz was just really, really focused there on breaking Drakir, and it massively backfired on him. Like Robo on 3, Drakir leaked 1 creep and a Robert. Robo on 4, Drakir full held, and now Mr. Buzz is just minus 4 income, which basically means he's lost his entire starting income from his mastermind. Well, he was cash out, so he had 0. But he's just so far behind all of the other players in terms of income, just from those small decisions on wave 3 and 4. So he's already a step behind by the time he gets to wave 4. And I think he just needs to focus more on his own economy.
And I think many of the newer players of Legion 32 might not see minus 4 income by wave 3 or 4 as such a huge deal, but it absolutely ramps up. Imagine just a couple of waves passing by, and it's just value lost. But also, we need to take the roles into consideration, because I think this is something we have not really talked about that much, but Fine's role was very limited at what it could do. It was basically just flying aura and a bunch of flying units with no real late game. So it was also something that I think damaged them by quite a bit. Obviously, if you have a role similar to what Fine had, you just can't afford to leak early game. You just need to power through the early game. And I think a reasonable expectation would be to accrue an advantage, especially that you're playing YOLO and you have the increased income, but this is something that just didn't happen. So it maybe came down to the nature of the roles as well, that they tried to get something done. It is also something that happens with the Spectral Scalewack a lot, right? Because your unit is extremely OP on certain waves, so you try to use those waves, and the waves are often long, so trying to use them up and save up some Mythium and maybe get a cheeky break. But if you don't, it's just over.
Yeah, and actually that comes back to that wave 8, right? I think I would have liked to see Mr. Buzz push a couple of extra workers into wave 8 and save his Mythium there, so he can actually pose a threat against Drakira on 9. But guys, that's enough about the previous match, because game number 2 is up right now, so let's see what Fine and Mr. Buzz can do to turn this one around as we go into game number 2.
Oh, and it's a very interesting game. This is something that I would consider one of the most open lobbies in terms of which masterminds are good. Obviously, if you see Overwork, Cartel, Cash Out, incredibly powerful. But there's also Sorcerer. And you can. I've actually done this quite a bit, and I've seen other fairly high elo players do it. I think locking in an Archer, if it's a Sorcerer game, is a very valid strategy, since the unit is just extremely broken with the aura. Like,
Yeah.
it's absolutely the best unit you can have with the aura. So maybe there could be this approach, but no, Drakir very skillfully rolls Cartel from Megamind, by the way. It's Megamind Fiesta.
Yeah, this
Beautiful.
is about the strongest start to a game you could hope.
Yeah.
Megamind Cartel, so the 1 free gold, and of course the 9 income, and he just has the Archer as well for fun. So why would you lock it in when you can have 5
Yeah.
more income, right?
You can just roll it, right? You can just roll it, and it's an overwork game. I'll say this again, because this is extremely important. This is one of the most powerful power-ups in terms of raw value that it gives you. If you have a lot of workies on wave 10 and you go for wave 11 or wave 12, that doesn't really matter. It's obviously dependent on how the board looks. But this can really ramp up and pose a massive threat. So I want to see how this game goes, because there's a high chance that one team will just absolutely snowball on the other.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Speaking of the Archer, though, Fine has picked that up as well, and he has a pretty juicy role there. He's got the Anglers, so he'll have that mid-game power spike, especially good on wave 11, 12 when there's overwork in the game. He also has the Doomsday there for the late-game spike, so I think he's got a very good role this game. Mr. Buzz, he has a good role as well, but it looks a lot more early game focused there with the flower and the mask. So I think he can do pretty well in the early, and he's actually going with the atom instead of the mask. I think it's a slightly different approach. It's much better on waves 5 and 6 than the mask is,
Yes.
but obviously much worse on, say, 4, 7, 8. So we'll have to see.
Yeah, but looking at Mr. Buzz's role, I think he's worried about that wave 5 because he really doesn't have a good answer aside of the flower. But if for some reason there would be a hermit flying his way, that would really pose.
That could ruin his day.
Yeah, that could really pose a problem that is just unsolvable with the current role. So I think it makes a lot of sense. What's interesting though is that Lucy is playing the infamous Scaly Fiesta, which doesn't really leak early game unless you get snailed, but there was no snail here. And you go for the Spectral Scallywag on wave 3, so you're not leaking 3, you're not leaking 4. The earliest you can leak possibly is wave 5, 6, maybe 7 if you're pushing extremely hard. So I'm very interested to see what Lucy does here, especially knowing that Drakir is playing Cartel. So you sort of want to leak, right? Not only you get gold from the leaks that you end up having, but you also create long waves for your Cartel high income, high velocity, high speed games team.
Yeah, exactly. Proper fast and aggressive gameplay.
Yep.
But you actually can make it leak on wave 1 as well, but you need to kind of int the positioning,
Oh yes, true.
which she didn't do. Maybe she's not aware, or maybe she just didn't feel like throwing the game, but
It's
you,
also
you
very
can.
hard if you get snailed, because it leaks a ton if
Yeah.
you go for the end positioning.
Yeah, right.
So maybe that was the concern, because no one played Fiesta in game 1, so there's a fairly high chance that in an overwork game someone would play Fiesta, right? So maybe Drakir and Lucy expected double snail just for fun, and I think this is a very valid reason not to go for the risky start.
All right. So I've just had a little bit of feedback that your voice is a bit quiet, so I will try and turn that up. Sorry about that, guys.
I've moved my mic a bit, so maybe that's also my fault. Sorry about that.
All right. So we do see a bit of a power play here coming out from Drakir. There is a Hermit on 4 into Mr. Buzz. He's pretty high value though, 365 here on 4. We'll have to see because he only has one AoE unit. The rest is pure single target. His Atom is tanking a lot though, so it will die quickly. But actually this looks pretty good, split tank.
Yeah, this is pretty good. But to be fair, that's one of the scenarios that we are talking about, right? Imagine a mask here.
Yeah,
it will
right.
still leak. It's obviously not a huge leak, but I don't think this is a comfortable position for Mr. Buzz. Because now, usually after a big send, you want to push for wave 5, because obviously you're playing Flower. But if there was a chance that Drakir could have another Hermit, even after he can, that's extremely dangerous. Obviously, that's a very, very low probability play, and I don't think Drakir would like to go for it, and also the wave was not long enough for it to happen. But yes, this could be unpleasant for Mr. Buzz. You certainly want to prepare your wave 6 and wave 7 as well. Those will not be as fine. Obviously, the Valtrum and the Canopy that will come out, I think, very good unit on wave 6. But it is susceptible to Brutes on wave 7. If Drakir wants to go super cringe, Mega Starve here, this is a concern that Mr. Buzz could have.
Right, and Mr. Buzz has got to be feeling under the pressure now because he did overbuild for this wave 5 and the send did not come out, so he is feeling pretty vulnerable. Yep. I think he has to respect both 6 and 7.
Yes.
He's kind of at Drakir's mercy already.
Yeah, and that's what I mentioned just last wave, that the leak on 4, while it in itself it's not as dangerous because it was fairly low and it doesn't really cost you that much gold if you overbuild for 5, which is something you sort of need to do with this build, because what was his other option? Add another archer? Kind of sucks, right? Add another atom? You don't really want to be stacking atoms, so he kind of needed to overbuild. But if Drakir saves up like he did, you end up overbuilding and you're still not in a perfect position for wave 7, and we see Mr. Buzz sort of pre-built for wave 7 with the Daphne. He doesn't upgrade the Canopy yet.
Yeah, and he would still have the gold for the Canopy, I think, if the send came on 7. But he's actually getting relief here. Drakir just going for the Income King here, wave 6. He's going to be very fine against that. Lucy, she receives a triple Lizard, but her Serpent is just snacking on those one after the other. They go down. Will the Scallywag die against the Roccos, though? Looks like it will, but it's living more than long enough. That's a very easy hold there for Lucy.
And I think she just put the Coiler this wave, right? The Sea Serpent. I think it wasn't there on wave 5. So this is a beautiful read from Lucy that if there is a send coming on wave 6, this is probably going to be the Lizards, as obviously you want pierce damage versus the Spectral Scallywag, and it's very unlikely that there's a chance for I don't know, a Mimic, right? There is no way that he can have enough Mythium, so it's most likely the Lizards, and the Serpent just snacks on him, and that allows Lucy to push quite a bit, because obviously now you're not afraid of a Recent on wave 7, you can push nicely, and you can maybe go for some danger, although I think Fine's board looks very solid, and he's also overbuilding just a tiny bit, probably tied to the Anglers, but no Bounty Hunters yet, which is an issue because wave 7 is just so many free stacks if you have it done.
Yeah, wave 7 is really the point where if you still haven't upgraded your Angler, it feels so bad. Because like you say, there's 20 stacks just in the wave itself, more if there's a send, which there was, and that's a lot of mana that Kingpin has missed out on eventually.
And actually, I think this is a point that we have to dwell on a bit, because this will have crazy implications on this game, I think. Because as we were talking about before, this is an overwork game. So you sort of want to have this very strong power spike on, let's say, wave 9 and then wave 11 or wave 10, wave 11 with the double Kingpin. But this is not really that probable anymore, because those Kingpins will not be high stacks.
Yeah, right, exactly. So something like Kingpin on 9, second Kingpin on 10 would have just been absolutely perfect for Fine. He would have been so strong there, wave 11, right? But now, like you say, he's just going to have so much less Mythium. He still has one fully stacked Angler on the board, wave 8, by the way. So, yeah, he's losing out quite a lot of potential there, and we'll have to see how badly that is punished. Mr. Buzz, meanwhile, leaking 51% to a full income send there from Drakir, and this game does seem to be spiralling out of control already for the Div 1 speedrun, maybe living up to their team name.
Although, look at Mr. Buzz's Mythium. This is a leak that's obviously
Yeah?
very painful. It's king damage, and it's also a lot of gold lost. But
Lucy's
if there's
looking
an upside-
really vulnerable on wave 9, yeah.
Yep, exactly. If there's an upside, I think that is just the save amount on Mr. Buzz. Although, look at how drastically the odds have changed.
That is a Ghost Knight coming out from Mr. Buzz here on wave 9, and Lucy cannot afford to raise her split, so the Ghost Knight will go left. It will tank the Antler, it will tank the Scallywag. Those units will never kill the Ghost Knight, essentially, and I
Yeah.
think this should be a pretty decent leak here on Lucy's lane.
It's an interesting send. I think a Ghost Knight is not the send that you think of instantly when you look at this board, but it's actually very, very good. And with the Antler positioning as well in the middle for the aura, it's absolutely beautiful because the Ghost Knight will just tank all of the units.
Yeah.
And I don't think the Coiler is going
Oh,
to
look at
the wave
this.
in
The
time.
split wrap straight onto the Coiler as well. So all of Lucy's DPS just dies super fast. She doesn't even kill the Ghost Knight. This is massive. 117% leak there for Lucy. Drakir, though, is he holding or is he walding? It looks like... Oh, it's close. The Robert versus the Atom, the battle for all ages, but Drakir does hold. He won't kill anything in the mid, though. But meanwhile... Buzz and Fine both leaking to the smaller sends from Drakir and Lucy. They're going to lose a ton of King HP, but I think it might be about equal in terms of damage.
Yes, and it's worth to mention here, Drakir obviously doesn't cover in mid, but look at the amount of workers that he has with the cartel. That is incredibly high. 20 workies on wave 9 or wave 10 if you have it. And with the overwork in the game, look at the position that is in. 180 Mythium already, and it's just going to go absolutely nuts once he picks up the power-up, if he obviously wants to. Because this will be an interesting couple of waves. I think the next few waves will decide the game. Who takes over work? If the leaks happen, how much stacks? How many stacks will the Kingspins have? That is crazy to think about.
We see the first Kingpin here, 74 mana. So let's say he lost, I don't know, 20 mana by keeping
20?
the Anglers downgraded for so long?
I'd say so. That looks like 20, 30 stacks maybe.
Yeah, something like this,
And the reason, by the way, did you notice that there was a recent comment in from Fine and Mr. Buzz here?
Oh, and Drakir is leaking. That is a 25 gold shutdown. So that's something at least.
Yeah, but on the other hand, it's another worky. It's 300 Mythium.
Wow.
And the overwork has not been taken yet.
I mean, he can siege ram here, pre-income.
Or they could go 12 and absolutely cringe to the Mega.
Oh, let's see. They do save their Mythium here.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is painful. And even though Drakir doesn't go for overwork, just by the amount of workies that he has, the sin is just going to be absolutely massive. And there's not really a good way for Mr. Buzz to answer it. Obviously, he has the Bunk, he has the Flower, so that's a lot of AoE. Pretty good on wave 12. But the scent is just going to be so incredibly high that it's going to be hard to hold it.
Well, the other thing to point out here as well, right? Bear with me because Drakir took the power-up spell, the buff spell, the Sorcerer, and Lucy's taken the Overwork, right? But Buzz and Fine, they've gone for their income king here. So Drakir and Lucy, they are under no pressure whatsoever. And if I look at Buzz and Fine's boards, they both look absolute garbage on 13.
Yeah.
Absolute garbage 13. So if they save one more wave and they send 600, 700 Mythium on 13, I think they probably just one-shot them.
Absolutely, I think so too. And it's worth to mention, there was a line where Lucy and Buzz go for like crazy double overwork 12, since their boards are so incredibly good right now, right?
Yep.
There are the Kingpins, there's the Bunk. You could have gone for Force Wave 12, so we know that we have a chance, right? Because if you don't do that, if you aim King on 11 like they did, and you don't go for the overwork, Drakir and Lucy are open to do anything. And
yeah, and here they do save as well. This is so dangerous now for the Div 1 speedrun side. They are in so much trouble.
There's just no way. Even though Fine has Millennium on the board right now, and he's going to have Doomsday next, I assume. I don't think it's going to be enough. And
Yeah.
it's actually a very odd choice for Mr. Buzz in terms of a power up. He took taxed allowance in this game, where like even if you don't want to go for the overwork, why not go for Sorcerer on the Banana Haven or even on the Death Cup? That's just a massive amount of damage that you can have.
I think Sorcerer on the Haven is one of those like massively underrated spells
Yeah,
because it's
certainly.
really strong. It's surprisingly strong when you have Sorcerer on a Haven like that. And I
Yeah.
think a lot of people maybe just kind of
Don't think about it.
don't think about it, yeah, because it's not, you don't think of it as being like an ability damage unit, but it really is, and it scales so well with that Sorcerer. Lucy here with another Pro Leak, so she Pro Leaked on 1, tons of overwork value, sure, a bit of negative value here as well, but it just extends the wave that bit longer, and the Sens come out. They are massive here on wave 13. We've got double Four Eyes Mole Hermit from Drakir, double Ram from Lucy. She's going to have a bunch more Mythium to send as well. And wow, these guys are in trouble. They have 74% HP on the King. Do they have a hope of surviving? Fine is pretty close to value, honestly. He's in the grey value there. And Mr. Buzz will be as well when he finishes spending his gold. He does have a Sovereign here. We have a full Doomsday here. Is it going to be enough, though?
So I'm just going to say, I think it's super important that Lucy got double tank in income, right? Because you want the Doomsday to focus on a tank unit at the start of the wave, and obviously with the even split you need 2 tank units. And the Doomsday is actually
It's
dying.
tanking way too much. Can it survive? Can it kill this creep? It can! That is so clutch there from Fine. If that Doomsday died, he would have leaked absolutely everything, but it survived perfectly, and he's actually doing really well because of this.
Yes, they
Wow.
live. Look at that.
Wow.
Fine.
Okay.
Beautiful off tank by the Doomsday. Obviously, Mr. Buzz leaks a lot, but his port was just quite bad here. But this actually gives Fine and Mr. Buzz a chance.
Right, yeah. And this seems a bit like they've just swapped roles from game number 1, right? Because although Drakir and Lucy had a really strong start to this game, they did go a little bit all in here with this wave 13. And now if you look at the win chance, Jules is calling it more or less even between both sides.
Yes, but at the same time, look at the decisions made by Drakir and Lucy. I think Drakir is straight up pushing everything. Is he suiciding? Are they looking for wave 15 plague here? Because it definitely looks juicy. Neither Fine or Mr. Buzz have a good unit for 15 on their boards, and not really good units in their roles as well. Nothing is hidden. There's no LOD. There's no unit that can do well. And look at that. Fine even adds an egg. This could be absolutely...
Oh, wow. Yeah, that is a blunder then, because Lucy is pushing as well. And sure, they might just expect this to be kind of the usual play, where you just don't spend your gold. And Fine and Mr. Buzz, they both kind of did this. But no, Drakir and Lucy, they are committing. They want to close out the game here on wave 15. We will have to see if this egg comes back to bite Fine in the ass when we see wave 15. And Lucy's even going to leak here against the no-send.
This is so lovely from Lucy as well. Look at that. It's 50% to no-send. You don't care about the amount. You just care about the wave length. And it's absolutely murderous. And Fine now has to feel so bad about the egg. He just has to regret that decision. So
right.
Because you know this end is coming. You absolutely know that this end is coming. And you know what's the worst
this
part
is
anyways.
interesting, though. This is interesting now, because Fine and Mr. Buzz, rather than just going for the Income King route, they're deciding to turn this into a race. So we see Needlers coming out from both into Drakir and Lucy. They're both heavily undervalued because Lucy is essentially suicide pushing here. And that said, Mr. Buzz and Fine are both actually much closer to being on the recommended value compared to Drakir and Lucy. So this play may end up backfiring on the side of Barnes Kieran.
Absolutely. And it's worth to notice that there's just so much tank value on both Mr. Buzz and Fine. They don't have much damage, especially Mr. Buzz, but it's a triple canopy, it's a bank, it's a sovereign. That's just incredible tank value. So this could actually win them the race. This could actually be a hold even, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, Drakir was feeling nervous here. He spent 120 Mythium on King upgrades, and if that ends up making the difference, this could be pretty unfortunate. And the Daphnes and Zeuses are just speedrunning that boss. This looks very, very good in Mr. Buzz's lane, and actually fine. He's doing fine as well. Did he sell the egg? He did. Great presence of mind there from Fine. He knew he had to make a bit of a sacrifice there, sell his egg. But Lucy and Drakir, they are taking a ton of king damage here. And in fact, this is GG. Well played, Mr. Buzz and Fine. They actually turn this into a tied series here.
Beautiful, beautiful decision to full send on wave 15. Beautiful decision to sell the egg. Absolutely perfect hold on wave 13. You gotta give it out to them. I think it's the thing we were talking about after game 1. Play your own game, focus on your own lane, don't try to go for the crazy stuff. And it works out for Fine and Mr. Buzz. Drakir and Lucy, they sort of outsmarted themselves.
Yeah.
They tried to be cheeky with the send on wave 13, with the overwork, with the prolonged waves, with the leaks. And Fine absolutely smurfed it with the Doomsday.
Yeah, that was really perfect positioning from Fine there on 13. And take a look at this win probability graph, because Barnes Kieran were just way, way favoured all the way from wave 8 through to wave 15, even after that kind of aborted attempt on wave 13, which didn't do nearly enough damage that it needed to do. They were still favoured, but then Fine and Mr. Buzz with some really good decision making there on 15, going for the full send race rather than the income king. They just turned this game around, and that's a massive upset, I think.
Yeah, I'm really baffled with the result of this game. I think that Drakir and Lucy were in a commanding spot to win it, right? And sort of hindsight is 2020, obviously. But if you kept incoming and or went maybe a bit less hardcore than the 13 play with the super long save, you probably just extend the game to a point where you take over. But you taking the risk with the long save and not making it happen, and then taking another risk with the wave 15 when the enemy is certainly overbuilt, right? Because you see on wave 14 they don't add anything and they're both over the value. This is just how a couple of small decisions that seem logical, because the wave 13 send was certainly logical, right? Can end up absolutely destroying your game. And it was close. Drakir with the king ups almost saved them, but in the end, it's 1-1 in a series that from the start we sort of felt like would be fairly one-sided, or should be fairly one-sided, and the game 1 went into a direction that we expected. So this is now very, very interesting to see what happens in game 3.
Right, absolutely. And so far, it does seem like this series has been a bit of a story of whoever starves loses. Cringers get cringed.
Do you think it's tied to the current state of Legion with the balance changes that have happened?
Do you know, that might have an impact, actually. So with the weaker mercenaries and with combos being so strong at the moment, it does feel like it's really hard to go for those all-in plays. And so far, we've seen the all-in, whichever team goes for the all-in, losing. So the higher income, the more kind of tempo-oriented play has been coming out on top, and the really all-in, long save, kind of full commitment play has not worked both times. So we'll have to see. As we go into game number 3, we do have a lobby open. Let me get you in here as well.
So are you trying to say that saving your Mythium and not pushing too many Warrior Keys is a valid strategy for the game? Is that what you're trying to sell?
Well, I mean, look, if you're playing against me on the ladder, what you should do is income king every wave.
Oh yeah, that I've learned that the hard way.
Because I'm a filthy overbuilder, right? So you will just outscale and pull ahead. Try and starve me, it's going to backfire.
Oh Lord, I've seen your board look suspicious so many times, and I'm like, in my head, I'm like, oh yeah, that's brute time, and there's like plus 100 added, and I'm like, okay,
If I'm looking weak, it's because I've shifted. There's no way I've pushed the worker button. I'm just shifting for something for next wave, so don't full send me, it won't work.
Mr. Buzz has learned the lesson from you, seemingly, looking at how the previous game went. But now I'm actually interested to see what the adaptation on Lucy and Drakir side is going to be.
Yeah.
Because, you know, one of the most important features and qualities you can have as a player in a best of series, right? Is the ability to adapt to how your opponent likes to play the game. And obviously in Legion TD2, it comes down to preference, to roles, to masterminds, to power ups. But there is some merit to knowing your opponent, and I think having this testing field in game 1 and 2, Drakir and Lucy could end up changing their strategy just a tiny bit.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And I think we're about to find out the answer to that question, guys, because here we go with game number 3. So a tied series now. And do you know what I would love to see from Drakir and Lucy this time around? Is just more of that tempo play, right? And it looks like in the mastermind choices, that is exactly what they're going for. We have Greed on Lucy, we have Castle even on Drakir. So this says to me, they just want to go for that scaling play. They're not going to try and go for this all-in, like Gigastarve committed play again, because it backfired on them in game number 2. So now they just want to scale.
So that feels like the adaptation we were just talking about. Drakir going for Castle. I think this is all you need to know. Although a very interesting game for sure in terms of masterminds, because obviously Greed and YOLO are fairly speedy masterminds in the sense of they can actually bring you a lot of income. You can actually snowball with them. But both Chaos and Castle prefer to scale. Obviously, Castle, you get a mastermind post wave 10. But with Chaos, you want your income high as possible so you can use this extremely powerful ability of having an unlimited amount of combos, an unlimited amount of different scenarios on the board that can possibly save you from pretty much any danger. There's a chance a good Chaos player, a skillful Chaos player, will not have a single weak wave in the game, right? Because they just roll well.
Mm-hmm. And this is really interesting now from Lucy, because he's going for the fake Fiesta play, right? She played Fiesta last game, and it really didn't work. She had a terrible Fiesta game. I don't think she leaked like any wave before wave 10, and that probably had an impact as to why they lost the game. But now she's faking Fiesta, and she's trying to bait out that post-income snail here from Fine, where she's just on massive value and will easily hold. So we'll have to see, does Fine fall for it, or will he save his Mythium?
But look at that play from Lucy as well. She saved on wave 1, and there was a Lizard in income because of the leak. But Mr. Buzz reads this very well, adds the Gargoyle. I really don't think he's in any danger considering how good typing-wise Daphne is for this wave, even though the Lizard is obviously annoying. But on one hand, I think it's an interesting play. It's a play that you may not expect. But now it allows Mr. Buzz so much freedom.
I think this is just a mistake from Mr. Buzz, honestly. I think you just never add on wave 2 with a Daphne.
Yeah,
that's tiny crazy balls play there. But maybe he was just really scared of the Fiesta. Like, he might have got a 60 from Lucy, but even with a 60, he doesn't leak badly enough to make 5 workers not be worth it.
Yeah, that's probably 20% leak, if it ever leaks, and you have a lot of workies to use. What is interesting now is that Mr. Buzz has pushed the 6th workie.
Yep, that makes sense.
This could maybe end up being a leak, but obviously it won't. So, out of mind games, there was some risk taken by Lucy, and obviously this allows Mr. Buzz to feel fairly comfortable in the position that he's currently in.
Mm-hmm. So now we have Drakir and Mr. Buzz tied on the top spot there with 6 workers, but Lucy now evens up on that side. Fine. He is not pushing though, he's staying on 5 workers. I guess he wants to upgrade that bounty hunter here on wave 4, not making the same mistake he did in game number 2, where we saw, having said that though, no, he does push the worker, he just does it very late, and now adds the infiltrator instead.
Yeah, interesting decision to go for the infiltrator instead of the bounty hunter. I think if you wait up with the worky button for so long, maybe it's just better to go for the bounty hunter. But what is important, I think, is to look at Lucy's role, because that's a lot of early power.
Oh, wow.
Devilfish Harpy combo, obviously very, very strong in the early game, allows you to push a lot of workies. Obviously, Harpy is one of those units that sometimes allows you for the crazy scenarios that you just push and push and push. But with the Valshroom, soon to be Canopy, that is a super powerful early game
role.
to
And
try
the
push
Devilfish
maybe
is
a-
just the perfect tank for the early game, right? It's so
Yeah.
good on all of the first 6 waves, essentially.
Yeah. And we see some sense come out. A Dino out of Lucy. I don't think this is likely to break Mr. Buzz, especially
No.
that he has a Green Devil, a Honey Flower, and almost 500 value. It's worth noticing a lot of value in this game overall. 6
Yeah.
workies on Drakir, 6 workies on Mr. Buzz.
Everyone is turbo overbuilding, it seems.
Yeah.
Lucy, the most fast and aggressive player in this game, and that is really saying something. She's on 435 value, and that is the lowest in this lobby. Close to 500 value is Drakir and Buzz, but fine, bang on there, 500 value on the nose.
Yeah, this is certainly a Pennywise type of game, you know?
Oh yeah, that's just the way I like it.
Yeah. You meet Pennywise burnt as brought on the ladder. Yeah, that's what you're getting. But looking at the current situation, what is interesting is that the situation is understandable, especially on Drakir's side, since his castle. But I think Lucy and Fine could get cheeky with it. 8 workies on Lucy, so oh, that's cheeky.
That's pretty juicy. That is pretty juicy. Buzz
Buzz
and
is
Fine
saving
both on 7 there. Mr. Buzz is really saving his Mythium
Yeah.
as well, though. So is it going to be another one of those games where we see the cringers end up losing the series because Buzz is dangerously close to being marked as a cringe lord here. 140 Mythium in the bank, not sending 6, probably going for that Mimic or even an Ogre wave 7.
I think, just given the nature of the board for Lucy, right? It looks like a Mimic angle. Double Devil
Mimic would be
Fish,
pretty good.
Balshun. That is a lot of weak typings versus the Mimic damage.
Yeah.
But Drakir is very vigilant of that. Look at his extreme overbuild, even though he's getting some sense. I don't think he's ever leaking next. The question is whether he can cover, but his board looks extremely sorry to
Oh,
Full
and
Exotic.
Buzz is even
But Mr.
saving his
Buzz,
Mythium here. Wow, okay. So he's really committed to the cringe now. But this, I mean, look, this is exactly what we've been talking about the whole series, right? When one side overcommits, especially this early on, you're essentially gambling all of your chips away at once, right? Because sure, if it works, if he gets 100% leak on Drakir wave 8, then it can all be worth it, it can all pay off. But if Drakir just does even marginally well there, then this is really backfiring on Mr. Buzz.
Oh yeah, and I've been talking about Lucy's lane when Mr. Buzz is sending to Drakir, obviously, so yeah, the Mimic definitely wouldn't have been good. But the problem now for Mr. Buzz is that he's saving up, but his 8 doesn't really look that well. I mean, he has some tanks in the Green Devil, in the Steed, but the damage is sort of lacking, so it's interesting to see. Although the sands are not big, so maybe he's not that problematic. Let's see what happens. Safety mode?
He goes Mole, Hermit, and Lizard. Okay. I
Okay.
think I would have liked to see a Ghost Knight, honestly. Like, it always goes into the
Yeah.
split, but quite often what happens if you only send one tank is that this third column melee unit
Yeah.
will go across, maybe even the second column melee unit, and then you have, like, one melee unit on the left tanking before the Ghost Knight wraps around and starts killing your aquas.
Yeah, what's beautiful is that Drakir sells the even split, and now all of the single target DPS is going to go on the safety mode, which is going to.
Oh,
Now I
the mole
think-
still goes right,
Although-
actually.
Yeah, this is unfortunate because it is going to add a lot of value.
Yeah.
To send.
Oh, this Fire Elemental tanking absolutely perfectly though for Drakir, surviving there on 20% HP. It's even now split tanking with the Atom. This is about the perfect use of its HP. In fact, is he just full holding here against the 260 send? I think he is, and Mr. Fake One, I believe Mr. Buzz is now
Yeah.
out of this game.
Yeah, this is not pretty. I think, okay, this is obviously, once again, hindsight, but an Ogre would have actually been a very nice send here because it's very good typing against Drakir's board. And in the end, Mole Hermit just wasn't it. And
Yeah.
now look at the situation in terms of income on all of the players. Fine is also extremely cringy. 240 Mythium on him. That is going to be wave 10 send, I guess, versus the Shadow Dancer. but that's such a starvy game, and this is beautiful for Drakir. He held up the crazy massive sand, and the game is super slow, so his castle is about to absolutely take over.
Right. When we see that wave 11 castle power spike coming in, Drakir is just going to be so far ahead of Mr. Buzz. Now, sure, Fine is kind of doing better than that because he hasn't had the pressure on him. He's had Mr. Buzz enabling him, but I think Drakir, compared to Buzz, is just going to be an absolute massacre in the power scores. And we even have Mr. Buzz leaking 42% to a Lizard here, which is really not doing him any favours.
Yeah, the HP buff coming in hot here, and yeah, you certainly don't want to leak early game if you're playing Chaos. As I said before, Chaos was actually my main mastermind.
Oh, don't! I'm feeling sick already. Don't say these things to me.
I'm sorry, but I'm being honest here. Yeah, I'm being honest here. But yeah, since I played the Warcraft version of the game, I loved Chaos just as a concept, and also it kept me from getting bored with the game.
Okay.
And one of the things that you really hate is when you leak early, because then you get it's such a pain if you can't add the super OP units that you get in your rolls just because your income is too low or you don't have enough gold. But now the Wave 10 Sands come out, and let's see if Fine can do some damage, right? Because that's the big thing. If this sand also doesn't work, I think Fine and Buzz are doomed.
Now his Ogre is staying alive. The Mole did kind of run it down, but the Ogre is doing its thing. This looks like it should be a decent leak here against Lucy, despite her being on 1,554 value here, Wave 10. Speaking of, though, Buzz is leaking 25% to a Dino. Fine is leaking big to the Triple Brute. All three Brutes survive. Lucy leaks only the Ogre, and that on low HP. And Drakir, he's leaking a half HP boss, so both sides taking major king damage. I don't even know which side comes out of this ahead. I feel like it's Drakir and Lucy, though, because they have more king HP. Buzz is leaking to income, and of course, Drakir's castle power spike is right now.
Yep, and that comes down to the king ups as well. I think the more attack that Drakir and Lucy had, very helpful in such a situation, but also, as I said before, the castle power spike is going to be absolutely incredible this game, and there's no offensive masterminds here aside of no offensive power-ups aside of maybe Giant Snails, but it's not as powerful as, I don't know, an all-out attack or an overwork. So this is a perfect castle game, and now Drakir and Lucy, I feel like, are chilling just because of the nature of how income is going to push Drakir up in the power score. Right now he's over Buzz anyway, but in the upcoming 2, 3, 4 waves maybe, he's just going to skyrocket to top.
Yeah. And look at this, because Lucy has an egg sack as well. The perfect time to drop it there. She got to send on 10. She's not under any threat on wave 12, especially if she gets that Dread Knight upgraded, and then she'll have the egg power spike on 13. So this is just going to cement their lead, I think, and things are really starting to spiral out of control if you are a Div 1 speedrun fan.
Yeah, so what do you do in this position as a Div 1 speedrun fan? Like, what do you expect to happen? Obviously, Mr. Buzz playing Chaos, so he wants good rolls, and I think he's been given one since there's a Millennium, and I think it's fair to say that you're expecting a Wave 13 Sand with the double Fire Elemental and a Kingpin on Fine's board. That looks very sus to Wave 13 Sand.
Yeah, but he's shifting a ton of gold. He can be completely fine on 13, I think, although he is building more Alpha Males here, which certainly won't help him too much on 13. But
he needs damage.
It's a good tank, I suppose. He needs damage for sure. He needs more Zeus, which he's actually rolled away from, so he can't build more. But he could go for a Disciple Starcaller or something like that.
Yeah, but it's kind of late for that, no? I mean, he has some gold shifted, and I guess they could also income send here or even full send here. But even if they do, although the value is kind of sus on both sides. I mean, all the players are very high value. So
I think everyone's going to save here. I think both sides are like so overbuilt that they just want to go a little bit longer. We have Lucy, who is plus 100 value essentially when she finishes spending her gold here. Drakir has the Phoenix, so he's certainly not feeling under pressure. We've got a Millennium here from Mr. Buzz, and Fine, he just has a ton of value. So yeah, I think everyone is making the right choice to save here. The question is, when do Buzz and Fine want to send if they want to turn this one around? I think it can't be 14, right? Because Lucy's going to have a double buffed Sovereign there, so maybe it has to be 15, but that's rough as well.
I mean, it's probably a double buffed Red Knight, but yeah.
Yeah, well then.
I mean, no matter what happens here, I think the call to send is 15, right? Looking at the boards,
yeah.
I think 15 just looks so hot. And obviously, considering both Drakir's and Lucy's current value, you never send 14. I mean, this is a position where I don't think 400 Mythium can ever break a...
Yeah. And I just look at the worker situation, by the way. This is like... this is the sort of gameplay that would make me and Nick T proud, because we have 13 and a half workers on Lucy, 14 on Drakir, and it's wave 14. So he's actually managed to push one worker for every wave in the game on average. That's really impressive.
And you know what's the worst part is that Fine and Mr. Buzz must have already acquired the knowledge that Drakir is playing Castle. Look at the power score. On the top, this 40 gold, 40 income, difference on the 4 waves.
Yep.
Given how low income, how the game was super low income, and also given how low worky the game was, is just such a massive deal. And as we've been saying, the send on 15 comes in on FCOC and Drakir's side. Final Sodding and Needler certainly will help with the Phoenix, but there's a lot of Treants on Drakir's board, so that's unfortunate. 2 Krakens. Let's see what happens here. The value is certainly not on Fine and Mr. Buzz's side. And also, I see 2 Vulcan Cannons and a Millennium. That's extremely susceptible to tank sense. While at the same time, Mr. Buzz has suddenly found himself in a position where he's considering upgrading the Honey Flower for wave 15. That's not the perfect chaos situation.
Yeah, this is kind of rough, honestly, and Drakir has the Iron Scales and the Protector Phoenix. I think he's going to do extremely well, and Lucy is just basically on value.
Yeah. Lucy's board is just so incredible. 3.2k, almost 3.3. It all comes down to the fact if Dread Knight can be sniped, then she leaks poop. And that has
it
happened.
does die
So
very
that's
quickly,
That's actually so painful. How did the Sovereign end up on the right side? It was supposed to have died.
That's really rough there for Lucy. That's really rough. And as a result, she's actually leaking massive. But having said that, Fine and Mr. Buzz, they both leak huge as well. Drakir's doing
they have no king ups.
really
I
well
think
there.
they might be dead.
Oh,
I think
both
just
of those
dead.
bosses are full HP. I think they're probably dead.
Yeah, this looks like a GG and Buzz calls it out.
Wow.
Drakir and Lucy take the win, but it wasn't as pretty as they wanted it to be.
No, well, this was a pretty rocky game for both teams. In fact, if you look at that graph there, it looks like Fine and Mr. Buzz were favoured all the way through the early game. Then obviously we saw the wave 10 with things shifting around. They got a ton of king damage, and of course Drakir's Castle Power Spike kicks in there as well, and the game just flipped on its head in an instant. And yeah, the rest was kind of written. Drakir and Lucy, they cruised to victory there on wave 15. In fact, even though they both leaked on 15, I don't think they were in any danger of dying there, because they did so well themselves. And yep, this does mean it's a 2-1 in favour of Barnes Kieran. They will move forward to the winners match. I don't know, do we see their opponents yet? Is the other
Let me
match
quickly check for that.
decided?
I don't think it has happened yet, although... Yeah, no, the Chaos... Sorry, that's the wrong group. Dumb. So, it looks like a Damiator have swooped through leftovers.
Okay.
2-0. So, that is going to be a very interesting matchup.
Alright, so we're going to have a Damiator versus Barnes Kieran. That'll be in the winners matchup. We will probably take a bit of a 10-minute break and such before we get into that match, just to give the players and the casters a little bit of R&R. But just any kind of last-minute reflections on that series before we take a break?
Yeah, I think I have 2 main points that I want to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
First of them being, the series was fairly differentiated in how it played out, but I think if there's one conclusion to draw, Saving, bad. Both, like most of the cringy plays, especially in the early game, have usually turned out to be fairly bad for the people doing the cringy starving. So certainly the merc buffs maybe not good enough yet to make certain plays like this, like those plays, good enough. And the second thing that I also wanted to say is that 2 hours of the broadcast already done. Please claim your orange essence. Remember to do it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Got to be done.
Important.
Make sure you're farming those drops, people. It's very,
Yep.
very important.
Please do.
I've seen some interesting chat going on, by the way, during our kind of caster segments. I've had a couple of people say it looks like we've got Elon Musk on the stream with us. Have you heard that one before?
That's a first for me. I've been called many names. Like I've even been compared to female casters, which I absolutely don't mind.
Okay.
But
Sounds like a
Elon
compliment.
Musk, that's a first. That's a first. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if I like it, but whatever floats your boat.
Be honest with me. Have you been manufacturing any electric cars in your basement?
Yeah, not yet, not yet. That's probably
Okay.
the next job I'll be taking after being a professional Legion TD caster.
Allegiance. Yeah. That's the obvious next step. Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought I might start
Career
like
progression.
I might start Microsoft or something like that myself. So we'll see if that one pans out. But yeah, I feel it could be a thing. You know.
Certainly,
But
that
guys-
seems plausible.
Plausible, sure. So we've had a pretty cool series there, 2-1 in favour of Barnes Kieran, but it's fair to say that the Div 1 speedrunners put on a decent show there. They gave them a run for their money for sure. So we'll have to see what happens in the next matchup. That will be Adamiator versus Barnes Kieran. We'll be starting that one in about 10 minutes time, guys, so don't go anywhere. We will be right back with that one. See you soon. Welcome back, Twitch chat. How are you? I hope you enjoyed the break. We have some very exciting games coming up in the winners match because it is none other than Adamiator. That is, of course, last month's championship team versus Barnes Kieran. Or can you pronounce it for me, Fake One?
Yeah, so I'm just so you know, guys, I'm trying my best. Barnes Kieran.
Oh, that's the professional caster diff right there. Those rolled R's. That is years
Polish
of
diff.
practice going into those
Polish
R's.
diff. It's just.
But this
just
is
how
going to
I
be a
talk.
really hype matchup, right? This could very easily be the final already because we've got last month's champions, we've got Drakir and Lucy who have won God knows how many Nova Cups so far, and this is going to be one for the ages. I think it's going to be a very, very close match. I can't really call it either way. I think maybe on the basis that Adamiator won the whole thing last month, they're slightly favoured, but it's close, man. It's really close.
So I think last Nova Cup, it was very clear that Adamiator have put in the hours. Both Adamis and Aviator played a lot, and Adamis is actually top one on the ladder right now, 10 points ahead of King Dance. So I think this is going to be a very interesting match in terms of how the community perceives the players, because I think for many people Drakir and Lucy are just the go-to duo because they play so many Nova Cups and they have won so many of them, right? But I think Adamiator are actually a very dangerous team to face right now. And it seems that the meta, the slower meta, maybe less Mercs meta, maybe suits them because they have been doing very well in the last Nova Cups.
Yeah, absolutely. They're also dominating on the ladder. I think last time I checked, Adams was rank 1 by some margin. So
he's 10 points ahead of King Dance.
Okay, only 10. I think last time I looked, he was about 100 points ahead, which was really impressive. The fact that he's still 10 points ahead of King Dance is no mean feat either, by the way. This is, he's really doing well on the ladder at the moment. Perhaps now that he's taken off the leg weights, that is Chaos, and he's playing more respectable masterminds, he's actually doing pretty well as a result. So I guess that's good karma there for Adams. But yeah, I mean, that's also good Nova Cup practice, right? If you're a one-trick Chaos pony, then you're not really getting in the practice with other masterminds when it comes to Nova. So maybe the Megamind is the best thing that ever happened to Adams.
Clearly, for many players it is, myself included. But just before we go into the game, I just wanted to point it out quickly that Drakir and Lucy have had their hiccups in the previous match, while Adamiator went very briefly, at least from looking at the scoreline, which is 2-0. So I'm very interested to see what happens here. So jumping into the first game, as the series is about to commence, we can see all of the players and already cash outs the cartels, aggressive masterminds to start off the first match of the best of 3.
Super aggressive, actually. We've got the double cartel pick up there for Aviator and Lucy. I think it's fair to say they are both of those players' best masterminds. We have the cash out for Drakir, and Adams is just playing a little bit more vanilla there with the greed, but he is turbo rewarded with his role. Look at this, he has Nightmare Butcher, he's got some solid tier 1 choices as well. The one thing he's lacking is some solid magic damage, so if the game gets to around wave 15, he's starting to look a little bit rocky, but that's what the reroll is for, right?
Yeah, and the king as well, right?
Yeah,
he's there
wave
for a
15
reason.
is King's job, for sure.
Yeah. But looking at the rolls now, Lucy has picked hers, and can I just say, it looks really, really decent. There's a cool transition here between the early game of Leviathans and Wolves and the Seedlings as well. They can actually be very helpful in the early game, to the Fire Lord and the assumed Phoenix later, and it's also Leviathan Bath with the Phoenix. While on the other hand, we see a gun start from Drakir. Aviator goes for the double Skelly. I think we're going to be seeing this a lot this Nova Cup.
Oh, he has the tree as well. Let's see if he is able to abuse this combo a little bit better than we saw with Mr. Buzz in the first game of the previous series, because I think this can be absolutely broken in the hands of the right player, and Aviator may very well be that right player.
Oh yes, that's for certain. A cool thing to notice here, we have a Doppel Butcher with Pulv in the game, so that is something that Adams could certainly consider. A very good combination. And if he maybe gets an APS Dark Mage in the reroll, that is extremely powerful on so many waves. So let's see how this develops. So far, Lucy pushes 6 war keys, obviously a prerogative of having the Tempest Howler start.
And Drakir, I think he will push 6 workers to no send here as well, by the way, because he has that Gargoyle, and he just knows the real power there of the gun and Gargoyle. On wave 3, he's not really under any pressure. Let's see, he has 50 gold, he doesn't push. That actually surprises me.
That is interesting, but I think it comes down to the fact that he sent a snail, so maybe he's a bit afraid of the leak that's about to happen. And also, Lucy gets an after income snail, and that leaks her very, very well, 58%. Obviously, Cartel sort of likes early leaks just because of the added income and the amount of workies you can push, but this is quite a sizable one, right? Anything over 50% is sort of painful. Anything over 30%, I feel like, is sort of painful.
Yeah. Now, sure, Drakir did get the leak against Aviator as well with his snail, but that was 3 creeps instead of the, 7 that Lucy leaked?
Are you seeing what I'm seeing right now?
Oh, that is obviously Lucy feeling a bit spicy here with the Brute on 3. Adams, though,
and
he's not looking too shabby.
Yeah, he's not, but if he places that bus the way he does, I think the Brute goes right, no?
The Brute, I'm not sure. We'll have to keep eyes on this.
Because there's a snail, so the Brute goes right.
It is going right. Will it get the last hit?
If it gets damaged...
It will not.
Okay. Because that's what I wanted to say. If it gets damaged by the Bass passive, it could actually mean a snipe, which is definitely close to a full hold. That way, right now, it leaks the Brute for sure.
Yeah, but this is actually pretty fine. That's a 33% leak there from Adams, and Aviator is, of course, holding here with the Scallywag. He will full cover as well, so no king damage there. And Lucy, of course, is taking that income penalty that we talked about so much in the first series.
Yeah, so my question to you is, would you take the minus income here as a trade for Drakir's 8 workies, and this wave is extremely long?
I think it can work out, right, depending on the power level of the rolls. And given that Adams has Nightmare Butcher and Aviator has Scallywag Tree, I actually think the roll power for the early game is in favour of Adams and Aviator. So these longer waves, despite Drakir having the worker lead there, he doesn't anymore because Aviator has now caught up.
Yep.
But this actually was in favour of Adamiator.
Yeah, but this was a solid 20-30 seconds added to Drakir's lead. But on the other hand, we need to remember, if you start Tempest, wave 4 is something that you usually want to really be aware of and really be mindful of how powerful it can be, because those flying chickens are annoying since your Tempest doesn't get the passive procs.
Yeah.
So very mindful of Lucy to stay 6 workies here, to add the Howlers, and to try and not leak extremely hard, especially considering that she's been saved on, and she's still leaking a fair amount.
She's actually leaking way more than I expected there, 58%, while she was basically on value with Howlers. She must just not have been making good use of their passive ability. Maybe we could get some lessons from Fluffy stuff in here.
And Fluffy was Div 1 for a while, so it was possible, but obviously the last call signups. What's interesting to me is that she actually had a very nice split between her Tempest and her Sacred Steed, where the Steed tanked 1 or 2 of the DTs, which is obviously the preferred scenario. But looking at the game as it is right now, beautiful board on the side of Aviator. He gets the Pora for wave 5 and also Pora Spectral Scalywag for wave 6, wave 7. Unless there's a Mimic, that's a very strong board. And guess what, Penny? Look at the Mythium amounts for Drakir and Lucy.
It's very close to Mimic territory. It's close.
Mimic time!
Yeah. Has he learned nothing from that first series, though? Because the cringers always lose.
But I think the cringers will lose much more, or much more often, if the enemy is overbuilding.
Right.
And I think Adams and Aviator are trying to use their early game roles. As you said before, the power of both of those roles in the early game is super high. But if you have an early game role and you get starved on, you sort of lose out. You miss out on the added push that you could have otherwise. And I think in the current situation, if they both end up leaking here, which I'm not sure will happen because Adamas' board is extremely powerful, but if they both end up leaking, this could be nasty.
Right, right. I mean, this is a Mammoth's End. We do have the Mimic and the Dragon Turtle coming out into Aviator's lane. That Mimic is snacking in the split,
yes.
plus 9 gold already. This is very good split tanking here, though. The Pota perfectly cancelling all of the damage from the left side, now starting to work away on the right side. And the Mimic, I think, is going to get through, but nothing else.
But it still, in the end, is 18 gold Mimic. And Adams is leaking, and he doesn't get the Rocco. I think this justifies the expense on Drakir and Lucy's side.
Yeah.
Obviously, this was a huge save. This was a very big commitment, but in the end, they will get a tiny bit of king damage. And also, the Mimic snacked on every single unit.
Every single one. Yeah, that
Aviator's board.
Perfect for him there. So, yep, I mean, I guess this is what we mean, right? It's a very all-in play. It can backfire, or it can do really well. And here, I think we saw it do really well.
Yeah, but at the same time, Lucy leaked in the past, right? It was the wave 2, if I recall correctly, and wave 4, 58% leaks. And this has left her in a position where she's just naturally a bit behind. As we can see on the power score, it's 1.5k, which sort of feels bad as she's Cartel.
Yeah, that is not where you want to be, wave 7 with your Cartel pick. This could get pretty dicey if we get past wave 11.
You really need to figure something out as Drakir and Lucy. What do you do in this sort of a spot? Because obviously with Cartel, you sort of want to take advantage of the income lead that you have. But given the situation, how do you salvage? I don't think you salvage it by income kinging and, you know, trying to come back naturally. I think after saving for so long, they are just forced to go for another long save, which is something they're doing. Look at that. 180 Mythium on Drakir, 160 on Lucy, while Adamiator are just income kinging every wave. But, to be fair, once again, their wave 9 is sort of suspicious. And with Adamas adding Nekomatas, that's certainly a territory where Drakir and Lucy could leak them badly.
Yeah, his wave 9 just gets even worse right now. Adams does have the head chef option, which is super strong on wave 9, but Lucy will have a ton of Mythium as well, so we'll have to see. I could even maybe see a wave 10 angle here, because Aviator doesn't really have anything for wave 10.
And also worth noticing, obviously, Doppelganger is extremely good typing-wise, but it sometimes struggles on wave 10. It's worth to notice that the unit sort of needs time to ramp up, and there's not always that much time, and if there's a send big enough, you can actually do it. But we see the send coming in right now, and it's a 4i coming in from FC Lucy, so if there is the head chef, as you mentioned, well,
it's the perfect counter, right?
It's not going to chef for a long time if it gets targeted.
Yeah, there was a very juicy pro leak here from Drakir as well. This was 25% from him, just extending the length of that wave, giving them as much time as they needed. Lucy gets her 4-eyes out. Drakir is sending Pack, Robert, double Brute. These sends are massive here on wave 9. This is a really scary amount of Mythium. 320 already from Drakir, with a little bit more to come, presumably a second Robert. Lucy can send a second Robert as well to go with her 4-eyes, and this is looking scary now. Though Adams and Aviator, they are both more or less on recommended value.
Yeah, but the value is just not incredible. Although, let's see what the Assyria has to offer here for Aviator.
As this is not enough, actually.
It's very little. I think this is going to be a big league, especially with the steeds. It's 160 gold invested into units that are only on the board to make the Assyria tankier, only on the board to make her useful, and I don't think she's been useful enough. This is going to be a big league, and also a fairly sizable league on the side of Adams, with the 4i going through. Their king obviously has some attack, but this will mean king damage. And look at Drakir right now, 19 workies with the cash out. And I think it's safe to assume both teams will try to maybe look for the venture play. But with the current position
coming out from Drakir, that is interesting. Because now he gives Aviator the freest venture of all time, but then maybe they go for something spicy.
This will leak.
Maybe this is intentional. Like, hear
Wait.
me out here, Fake One, because what if
Yeah.
he goes for this income send here on 10, and then he just essentially suicide pushes, takes Lizard Army, thinking that Aviator is going to go for that venture, and he just full pushes, Lizard Army, goes for a massive send on 12 and wins the game.
Yeah, I mean, sending a 12 versus Aviator looks very, very juicy. But then you take a look at the dances and you see a potential double doppel or a singular doppel with the double lifesteal.
Yeah.
This is going to be tough.
And with Pulverizer as well, right?
But maybe he doesn't cover. If they both go for Venture, although Lucy is saving up Mythium, so I doubt it will be double Venture. This is actually very interesting, because as you've been saying, there's a certain field to go for mind games here, but also if Drakir was to league Aviator here, it would just mean a long wave, which is good for him, right? But it didn't happen. Aviator has a lot of value on wave 10, and he just holds.
Yeah, and actually, Drakir didn't go for that play anyway. He just went for another income send, and yeah, Aviator has got the freest venture of all time. We do see double venture on the side of Drakir and Lucy, though, so they are not necessarily going to fall behind. A hardened Mudman here from Lucy, so she should do fine, especially because it's only an income send coming out. And Drakir, I mean, his board looks pretty solid as well, so I think good use of venture all around here. And Adam's obviously picking up that Pulverizer to go on his Lifesteal Doppelganger. A very strong combo there for him as well.
Yeah, we've been talking about that before, and it just makes sense. It's such a powerful power-up to one of the most powerful mid-game combos in the game. So I think in Adamas' head, he's already thinking, okay, how do I use my current position? Because probably the enemy team has taken Venture, or at least one of them has taken Venture, right? So what do I do with my current position? I have a very strong board. I'm super powerful for, let's say, the next 4 waves. I think the realistic weak wave for Adams is going to be wave 15. So
Yep.
what do you do in this position? Do you go for like a crazy push and try to maybe surprise them, or do you just handshake the wave 15 send? Is there a way that any of those teams can send 13 through the venture? I don't really think so.
No, I think
this
with
is-
venture on the board, 13 is kind of int.
Yeah, certainly. But if it is, what do you do as Adams? Because you're the only player in the game that has not taken venture.
Right, and you are just going to start falling behind, especially
Yeah.
because his role, he has rerolled now, he's found Pilgrim, so that is some of that magic damage that he was lacking, but I think his role is kind of falling off now, and especially
Yeah.
something that's worth pointing out, even though he has that Dread Knight there for the late game power, the fact that he's built his nightmares around the Butcher Aura already means that his positioning becomes a bit weird now. He has to put the Dread Knight in front of the Doppelganger, and then maybe build some Antlers and White Manes in front of that. But that's a massive gold investment just to get his build where it needs to be.
And if he wants to go for that, he needs tanks, and he's definitely lacking those right now. So
Right.
it's not looking pretty for Adams, is what I'm trying to say here, because you're in a position where you have the strongest point of your build in the entire game. Let's say wave 11 to wave 14, I think, is the strongest that a Doppelganger is ever going to
Yep.
be. But the enemy just gets venture for free. You're not higher workies than them, because if he was the one with 32 workies, then we can maybe justify going for the Pulv, trying to use your power spike, but it's not happening. And look at the current gold situation. Even though obviously Adams is shifting 250 gold, he's just naturally falling behind, and Drakir has so many more workies. He's just so ahead, and he's been put on fire by Jules. This is dangerous for Demi-Eater.
Yeah, 50 gold shutdown as well, so he's not just a little bit ahead. Now, it does look like Adams and Aviator are trying to force 14. Look how far undervalued they're playing. But Drakir and Lucy, with that venture, I think can do very well against it, and they're sending themselves. But wait, Adamiator, they are saving their Mythium. This is getting interesting now.
Okay, so I've seen Doppelganger in this position sometimes gets to carry. Like, it goes absolutely nuts, and it somehow tanks the Four Rises of the world, the Sens of the world. but it's a really big send, and there's not much Mythium. There's not much more gold on Adam's side. He adds the Canopy, and that will probably die very, very quickly to the 4-eye. So that's very interesting. And on the side of Drakir, look at that. It's the infamous Mimic Brute send into Assyria.
Okay, interesting. This is what we call the boom tech.
Oh, the Assyria doesn't tank anything.
No.
It tanked like 3 creeps, or maybe 4 creeps.
This boom tree is going to do some work, though. It already popped off once, now it dies and pops off again. It's not going to be enough, though. This will be a big leak on Aviator, so it all comes down to this Doppelganger. Let's have a look. It is not yet tanking the 4-eyes. It does look like it's absolutely smurfing on the wave. Now it attracts the 4-eyes, though. It will go down. Adam's doing very well here, leaking 68%, but he kind of needed to hold and cover.
Yeah, certainly. I think Drakir and Lucy, they just get out of a sticky situation, because now Adams and Aviator don't really want to send 15, which for Drakir at least would be a fairly weak way with the double Vulcan Cannon, so they're sort of forced to go 16, but then Lucy already has the Phoenix for 16, has some decent tanks for 16. I mean, it's not the best, obviously, but she can upgrade the Howlers. But Drakir, oh man, he's just going to be absolutely incredible on 16 with all the pierce damage. And even if you send Rams, there's just a King Claw, a Harbinger, also the double Iron Scales and Sun Badger. I think Drakir is just so nice and juicy on 16. So what do you do in Adam Eater's position? Do you try to extend the game to 17?
I think they're just in a really, really rough position, honestly.
Yep.
Like, it's so hard for them now, because not only is Drakir really good with that triple Vulcan Cannon on 16, but they can't really end the game on 16, and they're so far behind now that they need to be looking at a one-shot, because otherwise what happens, let's say they do leak them on 16, Drakir and Lucy drop down to 30-40% King HP, but they're so far behind in income, so far behind in workers and value, they've just lost the game regardless, right? And yet we have Drakir and Lucy do go with the income king play here. Adams and Aviator do pull the trigger with a full send. So we'll have to see. This really has to pay out for them here on wave 16, because if these leaks are small, then they might as well go next game already.
Yeah, and I think Drakir and Lucy are in a situation that they could even just do king ups, maybe no income, just king ups, and there's a high chance they live. I really doubt Drakir is going to leak much. Obviously, the send coming into him is absolutely massive.
But
it's
he's
a triple
on value. Look at that. He's on grey value there, minus 390 with 4.6k.
And it's the King Claws, right?
Yeah.
It's the King Claws. They're so incredibly powerful on wave 16 as well, because the wave is just so many units, so the aura gets to stack up nicely on all of them, and it's also impact damage versus the Rams. I don't know, I really like the way that Drakir has built for this wave, although one of the Vulcan cannons...
Is it going down, or is it just tanking absolutely perfectly? Wow, look at that from Drakir. This is a juicer.
And it seems like a full hold.
Yep, he is just going to full hold, so... maybe we just go straight next game. Sure, Lucy is leaking big. That's 118% leak on her. But Aviator is leaking to the income send. Adams will hold at least. But yeah, that is a full hold from Drakir against the 1,120 Mythium send on 16. He's even going to cover a bit for his teammate in the mid. And yes, this is not what they needed on the side of Adamiator.
Yeah, man. Usually, in a spot like this, I would probably try to, soften you up and ask you, hey, Penny, so where do you see the win condition for the underdogs in this position, right? Because they're obviously so far behind. Maybe there's a way they can get out, but I really can't see one. I don't think there's a lifeline here.
No.
Look at the value situation for Drakir. His 62 Wargies and his 1k over Aviator, 1.5 over Adams, plus 300, sorry. Overvalue. I mean, it's just like, what do you do in this position?
I think probably the win condition for Adamiator is...
It's game 2?
Well, Drakir's house sets on fire. He loses his internet connection. The bot takes over, but the bot doesn't take over in time, so it doesn't build anything for like 2 waves. He leaks full to no send.
Yeah.
And then they full send on, say, wave 20 or something like this. Then maybe there's a chance. But barring that specific set of events, I think this game 1 goes in favour of Barnes Kieran.
Yeah, I love how Drakir is almost on value for wave 18 on wave 17
Yeah.
while having 72 workies and Lucy Pro leaking nicely. So yeah, so coming back to the win condition scenario that you just described for us, I must say, yeah, it's not happening.
It doesn't look promising, no. And do they go for a send here on 18? They do not. So
It's just a
maybe
bait.
trying to bait the send here from a Damson Aviator with that pro leak from Lucy, but it didn't happen. And yeah, I don't know. It just feels super rough. Jules giving a Damiator a 16% chance to win. Again, this feels very
Once
generous,
again, generous. Yeah.
to me. I don't know, man. I feel like it's just going to come down to this wave 19 send, where Drakir and Lucy just have an absolutely overwhelming amount of Mythium, because not only are they miles ahead in terms of value and income, they also have a huge Mythium lead as well.
Yeah, so obviously I'm not as experienced in LTD2 as you. I've only played like 1,000 hours at this game. Well,
What a noob.
you probably have like 4K or whatever.
Oh,
Obviously
and
not.
the rest.
How many do you have?
I can check for you quickly. Let me
Give me
have a look.
give me a rough estimate here.
I am on 5,316.7 hours. Is that rough enough?
Yes, so yeah, it's fairly rough. I mean, it's still not L1 hours, but even though I'm certainly less experienced than you, I see a big amount on the blue crystal thingy. I know that is good, and Drakir has had like a lot of that. Like
He has a lot of that
lot.
blue crystal thingy. Yeah, he really, really does. He's
Yeah,
pressed
those
the
three
worker button.
krakens, those three krakens, certainly a very good testament to that. And it seems to me like the AOE from Aviator and the Income King from a Damiator side is a bit of a cope, but let's see what they can do. I mean,
Maybe we see a
Aviator's
miracle.
board.
Maybe we
Yeah,
see a miracle.
Aviator's
We do
board.
have like a big chieftain buffed antler here, a really good tank on 19. We have a pulverizer doppel as well, and it can pull off a miracle. It needs to right now.
Absolutely, and look at those cents. They're absolutely ginormous. 1.8 and 1.4k. The Assyria is tanking very nicely. It's absolutely smurfing on the way.
Yeah, really perfect.
And if
there.
you want to have a chance, you need this to happen.
Oh, it's
But it's
still
still
alive. It's
not
okay.
enough.
No, it's not.
It's just not enough. It's just so crazy.
111% there from Aviator. 117% from Adams, and it does
That's it.
look like that is all she wrote. Game number one goes in favour of Barnes Kieran. I think there's no surprises there after the last few waves. But yeah, very well played by Drakir and Lucy here in game number one.
It's just one of those games, right? It's just one of those games where one player in the game has a lead, and if they don't throw it, if they don't do something stupid, they just take it over. And that was Drakir in this one. Obviously, a bit of an unfortunate leak on Lucy's side. Maybe a wave 2, wave 4. Maybe she wanted to leak a bit less, but in the end, that ended up with Drakir getting the massive send on wave 6, 200 Mythium. And even though the leak wasn't big, it secured him a position from which he carried, and that's what mattered in this game.
Oh, absolutely. This wave 6 was a really pivotal moment here from Drakir and Lucy, like you say. Not only did they get their first king damage in, but he even got the full 18 gold there from the Mimic, snacking every unit on Aviator's lane, and it gave them the worker lead, it gave them the income lead, and they kind of just sailed this one home to victory off the back of that. Really well played.
And, you know, if we wanted to, like, delve into the details, the Starve also worked super well for Drakir because he pushed 8 workies on wave 4, so usually if you do this with Gun, you are sometimes susceptible to a full send on wave 5 if there is enough Mythium, or a full send on wave 6, but since you start for so long, you protect yourself from a potential wave 6 send, and that means you get to basically play a free game with a gun because you have a Green Devil waiting for you there for wave 7, for wave 8, so you can push freely with the gun, and once again you can go for the long save. And you said so yourself, Aviators and Adamas' early game looked very, very solid with the roles that they had, but they just never got to play the game.
Right. It was really tough for them, and it just felt like Drakir and Lucy they took an early advantage. It wasn't a massive one, but they took that advantage, and then they just never let off the pressure.
Yeah,
right?
they kept it.
They kept it. They kept their lead, and they just played very, very solidly, never giving an inch back to Adamiator. And as a result, they quite comfortably took this victory here. So super, super well played from those guys, and I'm really excited to see what happens in game number 2.
And yeah, I think this was especially important because this was a game full of the cash outs, the cartels, and it's important that you win those, right? It's just like some of those masterminds are so powerful in certain scenarios, and you really want to get a good start with if you're going for that sort of strategy. So yeah, commendable play from Drakir and Lucy, and maybe Pyromercs are useful enough after all, huh?
Well, yeah, they certainly look
They
pretty
can be
good
serviceable.
in that game.
Yeah,
Certainly look pretty good in that game. So that's maybe starting to spoil our narrative a little bit there from the first series. But to be fair, I think I stand by what I said in that it's very all-in, very committal, right? Because
it's very conditional as well. I think it comes down to roll powers. Because if the enemy has a very good scaling roll, with like little weak waves, it often just comes back to bite your ass. Let's be honest.
Yeah. And we saw what happens when it goes wrong in game number 1. It seems like the starving side always lost. And now we've seen what happens when it goes right, because Drakir and Lucy did it perfectly here. They got that big advantage on wave 6, and then they just hammered that home to victory here in game number 1. So really, really well played by them. But more to the point, I guess we have said that there is still hope yet for the starvers of this world, which is a bit unfortunate, but what can you do?
Absolutely. But I really think it came down to minuscule details, right? Because even after the wave 6 send, if we go back to that game, even after the wave 6 send, it wasn't like it looked super doomed for a Dame Eater. I think it was actually very open game, and if it wasn't for Drakir and Lucy looking for another weak wave, and if it wasn't for the fact that Adamas and Navy Eater actually shared a weak wave, and then Assyria didn't tank as much, imagine if the Assyria tanks a bit more, maybe Aviator can full hold, and then if Assyria lives, it also means that it's a fairly good cover unit, right, in the middle.
Sure.
This would absolutely change the course of the game. So it's not like this was a foolproof strategy from Drakir and Lucy. It came down to small details. They kept it in the lead. So let's see what game 2 brings to us.
Let's see, here we go with game number 2, guys. This is a 1-0 lead on the side of Barnes Kieran. Let's see, can Adamiator bring this one back to a tied series, or will they seal the deal here in game number 2 for Barnes Kieran?
And we see off the bat 3 very different King power-ups. Look at that. We have Divine Blessing, a super good power-up in terms of defensive prowess, and also creating an extremely powerful unit if there ever is one. The Dread Knights of the world, the Phoenixes of the world, they just absolutely love this power-up. But then on the other hand, we have the Press the Attack, which often allows for crazy wave 11, wave 12 sends. And then there's Battle Scars, one of the best, if not the best, scaling power-up, maybe next to Investment. So 3 very different options, inviting very different playstyles, and we see some of them already. Adam's going for Chaos, beautiful mastermind to play with Divine Blessing in the game, and then Drakir goes for Castle, looking at the defensive option as well, possibly if it comes down to it.
Yeah, I actually think Castle is a really good counter pick if you're expecting your opponent to try and abuse Chaos, which Adams does.
Yep. And we all know he does.
I mean, this is Adam's signature mastermind, right? Like, if there is one player who loves to abuse Chaos more than any other, it probably is Adams. He was more or less a one-trick last season. And I think when he's on the ropes like this, he will always pick Chaos. I've seen him do it a lot in the Nova Cups. And look at this, there's a snail here into Drakir, because it is very common for Drakir and Lucy to go Fiesta in game number 2 of a match, so they have tried to get this here with a double snail. Drakir will leak decently to this snail, but he's not Fiesta, he's actually Castle, so he might get punished decently here.
Yeah, and on the other hand, Snail goes into Aviator's lane, which is absolutely perfect for him. Once again, Cartel, and also starting with the Angler, so that's additional stack. That's also +6, so obviously very, very nice to have. So a good start for a Diameter this time.
Yeah, for sure. They are certainly on a bit of a lead already after wave 1, and even Jules is giving them
Wow.
+9% here. That is pretty spicy,
9%.
actually.
That's huge. But I think it comes down to the fact that Drakir took a risk playing the double Skelly with the castle, right?
Yeah.
Any other mastermind here, and you feel okay leaking. Obviously, it's not the desired outcome, but it's something you're okay with. But playing castle, no added income, leak on wave 1, which allows for a very comfortable snail resend on wave 2,
Yeah.
that has to hurt. And that's where the 9% comes from, right?
Yeah, and what's really interesting as well, this is just how kind of thresholds work in Legion, but because he was Castle and because he got snailed on 1, he was forced to stay on 4 workers here because he
Yes.
needed to add this Polywog here, otherwise he would leak to the snail resend on 2 as well. So he's just starting to fall further and further behind already, which is not ideal for a Castle player.
Yes, and to all the newer players that we might have on this broadcast, it is super important that everyone understands the concept of how snowball Legion can get, especially if there's a lot of leaks in the game, especially if there's a lot of income sending. And if you look at Aviator's board, 7 workies on wave 2 already, and obviously as wave 3 is about to start, he shows that he has the seedling, so there's nothing to be worried about here. This could also mean 8 workies if he wants to push as hard, but against Drakir's 4 workers, miserable 4 workers, that feels so juicy, so nice.
Yeah, he's really starting to push that lead here. We have a Dark Mage edition here from Adams, which is a bit weird on wave 3. It looks like it's working out for him. He maybe leaks the Lizard. No, he does.
That's actually good, no? Because you know that you had the worker lead on Drakir, and also he has no added income from his masterminds. So yes, the Spectral Scallywag will obviously build workies now that he's allowed to on wave 4, but look at the income difference between Aviator and Drakir. That's absolutely insane.
Oh, wow, he has nearly 4 times the income. That is crazy.
And this will only wrap up, because if the difference is so high right now, that means more workies for Aviator, that means more Mythium, which means more income, so it's extremely snowbally, and I think we might once again see a position for Drakir and Lucy where they will try to starve out the game a bit, especially knowing that they're so behind in income. They will never catch up that way, so you need to create a disruption. You need to create a situation in which you do something maybe unpredictable, or you just cringe the shit out of your enemy and go for a super long starve, right?
Yeah, and it looks like he's going for option B with cringing the shit out of Aviator, but the thing is, Aviator had those 7 workers on wave 2 already, right? So he's starting to fix his lane through income alone. And here we see this Berserker. So I was about to say Aviator looks really weak on 6, but the Berserker is pretty much the perfect unit to counter that. And what's more, he can probably add a second one for wave 6. So while he was looking super vulnerable there on the previous wave, well, if he has 2 Berserkers, he's not that vulnerable, actually.
So let me ask, for the sake of all the new players, what is the weak wave for Aviator? Looking at his board right now,
I
at
mean,
the Casket, at the Berserkers, because to me it seems wave 9 would be the earliest, but at that point,
there's no way
Drakir
Drakir can save till 9. That he might as well just forfeit already if he's planning to go on wave 9. So he probably has to go for like wave 6, but then the Casket is so strong there as well.
Yeah, and I mean, if you send wave 6, it's just Berserkers. If you send wave 7, that's just Casket, and also, I mean, the Bounty Hunter is also some damage, right? So there's really not a good way for Drakir to send on, but if he insists on saving, he's on 12 income.
He may get Mimic.
He's just going to die.
He does. Okay. So he did just get the Mimic there. I was about to say the Pro Leak on 5 was really bad for Aviator, and yet it does mean the Mimic comes out exactly on time there from Drakir. I think that was split second there. But we have the double Berserker here from Aviator, so I think he might just do fine.
I mean, if it leaks, right, it's a BB, I think. But if the Mimic somehow gets sniped, which maybe can happen, this is so painful for Drakir because this is his all-in. If he doesn't get this going, look at his position on the power score right now. He's already so behind in this game.
Really far behind.
This is an all-in play if I've ever seen it.
Yeah. And really good positioning there from Aviator as well. I was going to say a soft split with the Berserker, a full square down on the right there means that it perfectly off-tanks 2 creeps. This is sad though. The Berserker tanking before the casket so he doesn't kill the Mimic. That's unfortunate for Aviator. 68% leak as a result. Could actually have been a hold, I think, if that casket had tanked for the Berserker.
Absolutely. If the Mimic was sniped instantly, then it absolutely is a full hold. Actually, it was one of the worst outcomes for Aviator that could have possibly happened here, which is we don't snipe the Mimic early, but we snipe it in the middle of the wave, so we don't kill all of the wave, so 2 rockets live. But still, you can see on the P score, even getting this leak, even getting it to sort of work, Drakir is still so out of the game at the moment.
He's really far behind. Now, we have to remember that he is Castle into Aviator's Cartel, so those fates may well swap around when we get to Wave 11, but that is only true if the lead isn't insurmountable, which at the moment it looks like it kind of is, because Aviator is on 99 income, 11 workers, Drakir is on 58 income with 8 workers. This is very one-sided in favour of Adamiator.
Absolutely crazy lead for Aviator. And you know what the worst part is? He's playing Bounty Hunter. So usually what happens in games like this one is that if you play Bounty Hunter, you sort of take 1-2 less workies in the early game to make sure you have a comfortable position that you not get surprised. But look at that. Wave 8, Aviator is 11 workies, already a baby Kingpin. And that only means that he can full push here. But on the other hand, it's also worth noticing Lucy has been pushing. That's 15 workies already. So maybe there's a saving grace after all, because she's actually up there with income. 137.
Yeah, maybe she's expecting Aviator to be lower workers because Drakir was saving so hard trying to enable her. But actually, Aviator is on 11 workers himself, so he's certainly not slouching. And with this Wave 8 send from Drakir, Aviator can just full push here. He doesn't need to worry about the next 2 waves whatsoever. He can go very aggressive now.
But to be fair, we need to consider the Adamas leak is happening right now. And as I said, Lucy, a lot of workies, not under any pressure here. This looks pretty good for FC Lucy. So, you know, we just saw Drakir absolutely carry the first game of the series. So maybe it's Lucy's chance to do so. Although the massive send on the Adamas side could end up being extremely dangerous.
Oh, Adams is continuing to save his Mythium, so, I mean, Drakir not looking too great on 10, although he has options, honestly. He's got good tanks, he's got Sky Queens for damage, but Adams is threatening that Siege Ram on 10, which is just super, super strong, but now we see Drakir whipping out the Holy Avenger, which is pretty good against Rams and Wave 10 in general, so we'll have to see what Adams does now.
So every time there's a situation like this where you're getting encamped and your teammate is getting extremely starved, right? You sort of need to look at your weak wave, not at your teammates. Because at the moment that Adams has so much Mythium, it's fairly probable that Drakir will leak no matter what. Like, no matter what board state he has, it's very likely that he'll just leak with the amount of value set. So we sort of need to look at Lucy's board and think, okay, when is the chance that she will not cover? She'll not be able to take the send in the mid, and I think Wave 10 looks good, right? It's a Hellraiser, pretty bad value on Wave 10, double Honeyflower, also not great, but getting those leaks out of Adams means more gold, and also maybe a higher chance for Lucy to get, I don't know, is that a Starcaller angle?
I don't think you want a solo Starcaller. If it's not buffing anything, I think it's pretty bad value. But she can certainly build 2 more Disciples. I think triple Disciple is very good on Wave 10.
And that's a solid tank value.
No, that's what she does. That's what she does.
And decent damage. So, yeah, so Drakir will leak here, right? It's like unavoidable. It will happen. But what's very nice is that he's saving Mythium. He recognizes his position. Okay, I'm out of this game. I'm gonna maybe be back a bit with the castle, but I'm gonna make Lucy's life as good as possible. And I really like the starve here on Drakir's side, because, yeah, he can send a Dino and get, I don't know, maybe 1 more Doggo. but it doesn't change the outcome of this one. It never changes the outcome of this one. And the
Right.
pressure he gets for saving is actually worth so much more.
But this split aggro in Drakir's lane is absolute whiz here. He's got his double Sky Queen on the Centaur. It will now go down, but as a result,
maybe
the
it's not
boss
as
is just really healthy.
Yeah, I mean, I think it could have gone worse, is what I'm going to say. There's a chance he leaks the center as well, but as I've been saying, 10 was certainly not Lucy's strongest wave, and even though she has a lot of Mythium, a lot of income, a lot of value, she just can't hold, so that means a lot of king damage on the side of Lucy and Drakir.
Now we do have the Castle Cartel switcheroo coming right now, but before this went off, Aviator was basically double the income compared to Drakir, right? So things are looking a bit different now, the incomes are much closer together, but honestly, the only reason that Barnes Kieran are still in this game is because Lucy is doing so well. She is miles out in front.
Clearly taking turns on the carrying position, and as you can see, Lucy and Drakir doing a bit of a full send here. Press the attack taken by Drakir. As I've been saying before, it's important to try and starve your opponent when you know you're getting blasted like that, and it seems to me that the full send may actually work. I don't think Aviator is expecting the full send. He has a gate, he has a kingpin, he feels safe, but the 300 Mythium in Robos will be very painful. The bunker, by the way, absolutely oblivious to the possibility that there could be a send here. And also, look at Adam's income. It's only 160, so there's a high chance he leaks here as well. And there's no way to come back into this game. That's a very, very good read from Lucy and Drakir to full send here. I don't think a Deniator were expecting that.
Yeah. Also really interesting to point out is that Adams was chieftain buffing a Dark Mage here, and the Dark Mage didn't really tank very much either, so a bit of mispositioning there because he could probably have held with that value of those units, but as a result he leaks, he isn't able to cover any of Aviator's leaks either, and it looks like a pretty good play here on wave 11 from Barnes Kieran.
Absolutely, and Adams has taken press the attack as well, so a Deniator, maybe they were looking for wave 12, wave 13 play. Now it just feels so much worse, because you've taken an aggressive Mastermind and you've given up a massive leak. That's 40% king HP, but that's a huge amount of gold that you've just given up. So your press the attack has become so irrelevant in the context of this particular game.
Right. And I think it's worth pointing out, actually, that before we saw that wave 11, Adamiator were quite clearly in the lead, I think, in this game.
Yeah.
So what they did by skipping there, sure, they've maintained their pressure, but what has happened as a result, they've really given away that lead, right? Because now even Jules is saying that they're only 40% favoured to win the game versus 59 on Barnes Kieran, and more to the point, I don't know, they didn't need to take that risk. They could have just gone for the income king play, stayed in the game that way, because they were so far ahead economically, at least compared to Drakir, right?
Yeah, and if honestly, if it's any other power-ups, then the press the attack. I like the play. But you know press the attack is there, and you know that Drakir has saved on Aviator on wave 10, and I know the Mythium amount wasn't crazy, right? It was, I think, 100, maybe 110 when the wave ended, but still, with the press the attack and the Robos addition to the game, that's a fairly dangerous send, and I think Aviator just neglected the opportunity of a send here. And the worst part is there's not a good wave to send Lucy on, because she's farming those battle scars stacks on the Haven, so wave 14 is going to be so much easier to take on right now, you know? So with the Star Color Circle forming up nicely, that's a lot of single target DPS, so you have a lot of AoE in the Haven with the Hellraiser, and you also get a lot of the single targets, so sending Rams or Krakens, not as good anymore. I think this is going to be hard, but here comes the send.
Here comes the send. Drakir and Lucy, they're saving their Mythium. Okay.
Interesting.
This does become very interesting now. This send has got to work for Adams and Aviator, because, you know, they're really all in. I feel like they didn't need to commit this hard, right? They were they were really comfortable in the game on wave 10,
Yeah.
and then that wave 11 they kind of threw a little bit, I think.
Yeah, I agree with that. Because the important factor to consider here is that it didn't have to be that way. I mean, Aviator could have built just more units and hold easily, and that puts Lucy and Drakir in such a bad spot if that happens. But let's watch the Sens now as they come.
720
No.
into Drakir's lane, 660 into Lucy's lane. I mean, Lucy basically on value, Drakir is very far
Yeah.
under, so we do expect a big leak out of him. The Siege Ram is now tanking the Sky Queens perfectly, and yes, this will be a big leak from Drakir. 103% there.
Lucy just
Let's keep
holds.
eyes on Lucy. She is doing very well. In fact, that's just a full hold.
I'm kind of surprised by the fact that there was no safety mode into this lane. It seems to me that it would have had a lot of value, but even then, even if it leaks, it's a baby leak, and they have some king ups, so they're always safe. And look at that. Worker advantage, and now 700 Mithril, a rocket ready to be sent into Adams's lane, where he really doesn't have a lot of income to work with. Okay, now he adds the Drakes. Yeah, sure, that helps a little bit, but that sort of only throws you more into the pitfall of, oh, we get to push workies for free because we have just such a huge lead. Penny, it looks like it's going to be 2-0.
It certainly is heading that direction, yes. I think it's probably just going to be a wave 16 coming out of Drakir and Lucy, and I don't really fancy Adamiator's chances of holding there. Adams did roll Flower here, but he cannot afford to not build here for wave 15, so he doesn't drop any of those flowers. Let's see what he chaos rolls for 16 now. Nothing particularly useful,
Okay.
I don't think. Maybe a Phoenix, I don't even know if he can afford that. But more to the point, Aviator is just looking super weak on 16.
Penny, I can't find the banker. Where is it? Is it hiding from us? What happened to the banker?
It must be hiding, right? There's no way that Aviator would just int it away here.
Oh,
on
he
15.
hunted. He hunted,
He hunted the banker, right?
Yeah, when you do that, it brings back 40 Mythium. Did you know that? That's a hidden interaction. You need to type FF in the chat, and then it brings you a lot of Mythium for the next game. Unfortunately,
Brilliant, yeah.
yeah,
You know what? I
unfortunately,
think players who build bankers and bigwigs, they should try typing FF more often to get that extra 40 Mythium.
yeah, you're onto something here. So let's see the send amounts. Drakir, very consistent with send. 4 witches with the skin, with the bewitching skin. I love it.
Oh.
Honestly,
It's a
10
juicer.
out of 10. 10 out of 10 for fashion ratings from me. And on Lucy's side, a wide variety of units sent. Not a big fan of that, but it's a lot of Mythium, Penny. You know what?
It is a lot of
I think
Mythium.
it's just a lot of Mythium.
And Adams is massively undervalued. Aviator is closer, sure, but nearly all of his units are really weak on 16, and I just don't see any holds here. We've got 1,160 for Adams, 1020 for Aviator, and I just don't think either player is strong enough to hold here on wave 16. Can they do
would
well
be
enough
a
to
miracle.
survive, though? That's the question.
It would be a miracle for them to hold and live. Let's see if there's any miracle to be found. Actually, Aviator is doing fairly well. I think the Ocean Templar Aura are really helping versus the witches, but
He's
in the
still
end,
going to leak a few
look at
creeps,
the-
plus all
yeah,
of the witches.
It's
This is
Jover.
Yeah, this is everything. This is Barnes Kieran storming the series 2-0. It looks like there's 30 units mid, reaching the king, and I just don't think it has enough to survive here. Barnes Kieran, very well played here in the winners matchup.
Absolutely, and we've been saying maybe the first game, the first match, sorry, was a bit of a hiccup, but then when it came to the big boy lobby, Drakir and Lucy taking turns, Drakir carrying the game one, absolutely beautiful gameplay from him, and then I think, obviously, once again, hindsight, but I'm really not sure why Adams went for 2 incredibly long saves where he's playing Chaos.
He didn't need to. He didn't need to. Just take a quick look at this win probability graph, right? They are so comfortably ahead on the side of Adamiator all the way through the early game. They're in the lead. And then they just kind of, I don't know, they just int, essentially. There's no other way to describe
Yeah.
it on wave 11. They can just...
I didn't want to be that
income
guy,
in.
but you are. I didn't want to be that guy to say it, but you're absolutely right. I think You know, after Drakir sends the Mimic on wave 6, you know that he's in a desperate position, right? It's just a play of desperation. And then Adams takes himself out of the game. If you can quickly take a look at wave 8, by the way.
Yeah,
so
he's leaking
so
half
he
the way
goes,
to income, right?
yeah, and to King up as well. I mean, it's just like wave 3 to wave 5 sent from Adams. Okay, that's one wave skipped. Fine. 2 robos. Okay, that's -4. Oh, that's fine. But then
He goes
my
straight
lord,
5 to 9 against Drakir, which is
5-10 on Drakir.
yeah
5 to 10.
5-10, yeah. 420. I mean, it's short. It's a big send. It's a decent leak, but
But you're out of the game.
you're out of the
Congrats.
game, and Drakir
You
has
played
that
yourself.
castle to bail him out, right? So sure, Drakir is in a really bad spot on 10, but then his castle power spike kicks in. They get a ton of gold from this press the attack resend on 11. And the fortunes are just completely reversed in a single wave. They go from being comfortably ahead on the side of a Damiator to decently behind and in a really rough spot because they're behind in King HP, they're behind in King Ops as well. And yeah, I don't know, man. This just seems like uncharacteristic mistake, really, from a Damson Aviator.
Yeah, and that's what I wanted to say. It's fairly obviously I don't play high elo lobbies as much as you do. I only like maybe play 20% of my games in the higher elo whenever there's not enough good players and I get thrown in there as a shitter, as Witherson once called me, proud shitter. But yeah, I think having played against those people enough to like judge the situation, it is unusual. And obviously, let's call it pro play differs from ladder by quite a big margin. But even watching the Nova Cups, I've been watching them for a year and a half. That's not as common, and I think it came down to maybe a misconception on what Mastermind Drakir plays. I'm not sure, because if you recall, we can go back to Wave 1, wherein Drakir leaked the snail and his castle, and he's like sort of out of the game already. Like, I know that it sounds crazy, but if
But
there
he's
was
really
no
behind
mistakes,
on wave 1. Yeah,
for
sure.
Let's assume in a vacuum, no mistakes are made this game on both sides. That's a spot that you just lose the game from,
Right.
because you leaked the snail in game
Yeah,
1.
yeah. I think Jules already gave them a 10% lead by wave 2,
It was 9%.
right? Yeah.
It was 9%. It was 59 to 41 on wave 2,
Yeah,
which
yeah.
is crazy. Absolutely crazy.
You remember Drakir was forced to stay on 4 workers. He had to build the tier 1. His castle, he just has less resources than everyone else in the lobby. And then Adams just turbo cringes him for some reason. I don't know why, because he had the chaos, right? So he can just scale himself very nicely if he chooses to. But
It's
he just goes full
it's the
cringe.
meme. It's the meme with the guy with like a gun to one's head, and it's the same guy, right? Like that's Adams in this game. He just took himself out for no reason. He just like absolutely wrestles himself out of the game.
Yeah.
And Drakir is like, sure, if you want to start me from wave 5 to wave 10 when I'm castle, that's actually welcome, because you're enabling me to use my mastermind.
Yeah.
Absolutely crazy.
And they could upgrade their king, they can take the leak on 10, which was quite small. I mean, Lucy did phenomenally on 10 as well. She leaked just low HP Centaur and nothing else. Shouldrakir's leak was a little bit bigger, but honestly, he did very fine as well. And as a result, they just took minimal king damage, and they were in such a good spot. But then that press the attack robot send on 11 just completely turned the game around. I don't know, man. I would have loved for a Damiator to just go income king there, or at least play it a little bit more safe,
Absolutely.
because they had such a good worker lead. I think Aviator was 20 workers on 10 compared to 8 workers on Drakir. Just think about that, 20 against 8, and then they threw it from that spot. That's crazy to me.
Yeah, very, very sad, honestly, especially for Aviator. This was a game that he could have carried, and it was just like a joint decision that they made. But I might surprise you with this one, but I'm not sure if you know this already, if you check the site, but the Chaos Chemists have taken down Abraseared 2 to 1.
Oh wow, that's very
That
interesting.
is very surprising. Yeah,
So
that is very
Atrocity and
surprising.
Inderhole coming out in the top spot from Group A, then that's really interesting.
Yep, so that will make that will make this Nova Cup very, very interesting, because the probably most of our viewers assumed that Abraseared would get out of their group in first place, and then would meet a Damiator or Baroness Kirin in their next matches, right? But now it's a seed div for day 2. So that's very, very interesting.
Yeah, yes. So Barnes Kieran and Atrocity and in the Hole, they are guaranteed not to meet in the semi-finals. They will be on opposite sides of that bracket. Maybe we'll have to see them in the grand finals. And I'm very hyped, actually, for my boy Atrocity. He's a fellow Yonka Miyonka guildie and a very nice chap in general. So it's great to see him performing well in the Nova Cup. I'm glad. I think that's really good. The fact they've taken down King Dans and Widdowson on day 1, that's amazing. Very well played from those guys. Be excited to see how they perform tomorrow as well. But talking about the results, do we have a result from the second match in Group B?
Let me quickly look for it. I believe. Wait, my site is bugging. No.
It's okay. I have it here. So we have a 2-0 victory from Div 1 Speedrun over the Leftovers, which means Mr. Buzz and Fine will have another shot in this Nova Cup, and they will be playing off against the Adamiator duo in the last chance match. So we'll have to have a quick break there, give both sides a bit of R&R, and ourselves, of course, rest all the vocal cords. But yeah, that should be an interesting one. It's actually kind of unusual, honestly. I think the last few Nova Cups we've seen a repeat of the first series in the last chance match, but this time we actually get to see fresh teams all around. So Adamiator will get to play against Mr. Buzz and Fine, and it's between those teams to decide who goes through to tomorrow's semi-finals and who goes home with nothing. So guys, in Twitch chat, we will be right back in about 10 minutes time, so don't go anywhere. Make sure you are here as we come back with that final match of the day. Yeah, it's going to be a banger. See you soon.
Never possible.
Reality bends to my will.
Never toss a dwarf.
All right, Twitch chat, welcome back to the show. We do have one final match of the day before we close the stream, and what a banger it is set up to be. We have Adamiator, of course, Adams and Aviator. The clue is kind of in the name with that one, and they are facing off against the Div 1 speedrunners. That is Mr. Boz and Fine. So this should be a spicy matchup. Any favourites from you, Fake One?
I mean, obviously, just by default, I think going by the leaderboard position and also by the experience, I think Adamiator obviously should be favored in this one, right? But given how they lost versus Drac and Lucy just right now, it can be a bit tilting, you know? It can be an experience that just sort of throws you out of the mental state that you need to be at to win games. Because I think game one, fair and square, you just lost. The enemy played very well. But game two, I feel like you sort of cost yourself the win there, or at least a possibility of a win, right? Because maybe it wasn't set in stone yet that they would win this map too, but it would certainly be much more probable if they have not taken themselves out. So there's a psychological approach to this where you could say, hey, listen, those guys could be tilted, those guys could be sort of angry with themselves or just like not fully focused right now. Well, on the other hand, I don't think Fine and Mr. Buzz have anything to lose. If they lose here, whatever. They were one of the lowest seeds anyway, and they also signed up today. I think it was a bit spontaneous, right? And on the other hand, they are the underdogs, so that sort of always gives you this energy. It sort of bolsters you up to try and, you know, spoil someone's day. And I think Adamiator are in a prime position to get spoiled, basically.
To get their day spoiled, yeah.
But I would still say they are the favorites.
I think morale is really important in a game like Legion, because if you're playing on tilt, and I know this all too well myself, albeit on the ladder rather than in a tournament setting, if you're playing on tilt, your brain just kind of goes out the window, and you can start to make more mistakes, and you can start to feel
a lot
more
of autopiloting.
And it really just spirals from there. So Adamiator coming off the back of a rough 0-2 loss. Meanwhile, the speedrunners, they've just come off a 2-0 victory against their opponents. So they've got to be feeling pretty good about themselves. And, like you say, they know they're the underdog. So they kind of have nothing to lose here in this matchup. Whereas Adamiator, they're last month's winners. So they are feeling the pressure here, maybe a bit more than their opponents are. And that could lead to mistakes. So we'll have to see. This is going to be an interesting match.
Oh yeah, certainly. I still think Adamiator are the favorites, and I would still confidently say that I really would assume that they will win. but I certainly see more opportunities for their opponents than I would have had otherwise. If this was round 1 match, I would say with like very strong confidence, okay, this is probably for Adams and Aviator to take. But right now, yeah, this could be more interesting than we initially thought. And also, let's remember, Mr. Buzz and Fine took a game of Drakir and Lucy, and I think this is no small feat, right? This is one of the best, if not the best duo ever, maybe next to Abrasir. So that is something that we have to keep in mind. And at the end, I would just like to say, Mr. Buzz likes value. And like we all know that it's a playstyle he has mastered very, very well. So I think Aviator, Adams, they can't fall into the same pit they fell against Drakir. Because if the same thing happens again, this guy is just like cracking his necklace and saying, okay, I'm building now.
Yeah, exactly. And, well, guys, I think we're about to find an answer to our question, because game number 1 of this last chance match is here. It's Adamiator versus the Div 1 speedrunners. Let's go.
Absolutely, let's get right into it. We see Sacrifice, Lizard Army, Glacial Touch. Nothing too spectacular in terms of aggression. Obviously, Lizard Army is an option if you want to go for it. It has some drawbacks, but it also adds Mythium, so aggressive options obviously welcome, and we see the same set of masterminds on both sides. Cash outs with greeds, so I think this is the most vanilla, this is the most basic lobby that you could ever have. If you had a meme Legion TD basic guy starter pack, this is it. This is the lobby.
Yeah, this is a very vanilla game. I think Cash Out and Greed, probably 2 of the most upfront and standard masterminds there are, it has to be said. I mean, Greed is basically the one that every other mastermind is balanced around. This is the definition of vanilla. We've got some interesting roles, though. We do have the Treant and Canopy option for Mr. Buzz if he wants to go for that angle. We do have Gate Guard, Steed Start for Adams, which is pretty solid there for him. Aviator, he's got the Chain Fist with the Trinity Archer, so pretty good options all around, it has to be said.
And Fine, there's a chance he'll be banking, but he decides against it, fortunately. And it seems a lot of early game powerful boards here, with the Oathbreaker coming in and the Gate Guard with an Angler. This is certainly interesting in terms of the raw power. Also worth noticing that Aviator went for the Naked Archer start with the
that is
Hunted
ballsy.
Rat.
That is ballsy.
Yeah, because obviously one thing is just going a Naked Archer, because if he leaks, I mean, yeah, you're okay. But doing it with a Rat when you really don't want the wave to be long, that is crazy.
Yeah, this could have super backfired. Like, if Mr. Boz and Fine had just gone for Fun Snails here on wave 1, this would have been a really bad situation for Aviator, like you say. I think the leak, I don't actually know since the Merc nerfs, but pre-nerfs, it was something like 80% against a naked Trinity Archer. So
I think it's smaller now. I think it's around 50%. I think
okay,
probably
so
it varies because it's obviously the Elite Archer, which is fairly RNG with how it shoots, but I've had a similar situation with one of the very, very famous ladder players lately, Yogg, where I snailed him on one, and I think he leaked like 68 or something along the lines of that.
Oh, Fine though, he's turbo punished by the snail here on wave 2, 67%. Could he not afford to add a small fist here?
By the way, don't you think that that's extremely greedy of Fine to not add here, knowing that the enemy is running a Rat?
Maybe, right? I mean, it obviously was greedy the way we saw it pan out with a 68% leak here, but he did at least have the 6th worker, and he is putting some pressure onto Adams as a result. But Adams looks like he's more than capable of keeping up with that. Cash Out's still very, very strong at this point in the game.
So that is a question that is more like the game theory rather than this particular game, but do you like starving an Angler player in the early game? Because it's just so easy to not push the extra worker and probably hold or be very close to holding. Because right now, looking at this situation and looking at this board, Adams looks very solid on wave 4. Maybe aside of one situation of a Dino, because all of his left side would focus the Dino.
Right.
If he upgrades the Bounty Hunter, that is. Because there's also a different line where he just goes for the False Maiden, and I think that works very, very well.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I generally don't play too starvy in most of my games. Sometimes I do. You have to have a bit of a versatile repertoire, if you like. But generally, I basically auto-send, especially if I'm playing with Green or Julian. So I certainly would do the same against a bounty hunter, because you're just going to have more workers than them because of the fact that they're playing bounty hunter, right? So why not abuse that and just scale yourself? Unless, like, the exception, I think, is if you have a terrible late game role, in which case you probably just want to try and shut them down.
And that is the case of Fine's role, right? If you look at it, there really isn't a lot of late game power. It's mostly the RP with maybe the Leviathan buff. Maybe there's a Zeus, I don't know, a Pyro somehow coming out of Wilderness. But I think this is certainly not a very good late game role, so it sort of makes sense for him to start. But look at how well Adams is doing, just with holding, the power of value. That's just the power of value. His board is not even that good against this wave. Obviously, Bounty Hunter is pierce damage, which is beautiful, but the Gate Guard is really meh on wave 4. The Sacred Steed tanking in front of it is also not that good. So, yeah, it's just your enemy plays an Angler, and you know that there's a high probability of them going fairly over because they just want to protect their stacks. And I think Fine could have used his early game worker advantage in a different manner than this. This to me looks sort of like a wasted potential, a wasted opportunity.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's another one of those cases where you're committing a little bit too much, and he got really punished for it. That's worth pointing out as well, right? If he hadn't leaped so much on wave 2 and wave 3, then the play could very well have been worth it. But if we take a look at this, he leaped 67% to a snail on 2, he leaped 61% to 2 snails on 3, and then Adams held his Dino Send on 4. So if you're talking about worst case scenarios, this is pretty much what it looks like.
Yeah, but now Aviator goes for the Drake Send. By the way, in the meantime, Mr. Boss, 10 workies. This is very, very solid. But let's see if he can hold wave 10, wave 6, because if there's a wave that a gun player hates with all of his guts, that is certainly wave 6. And with his current board, I think what he would love to do is to have the gun tank 1, maybe 2 creeps with a good focus, because the gun is actually fairly tanky in the early game. Not sure if this is something that's going to happen.
I think this treant right here is key. It does pull the right side, but the gun is still tanking 3, and the gun is going down very quickly indeed.
Yeah, so if it tanks 2, maybe there's a chance. But tanking 3 and a Fiend as well, that's just a leak. And Fine, by the way, doing very fine versus the Drake.
Is value just good enough? He's easy holding.
Yeah, and that Sandbadger coming in hot. Also, let's remember, Old Breakies have a very peculiar way to position them. Also, how is Mr. Bass holding? That's the tanking gun actually worked out great, and Adami Eater didn't get any leaks here. Obviously, they did not fully commit. There was no power mix, but I'm kind of surprised. I thought Mr. Bass would maybe leak 1 or 2 creeps.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't even need the gun, it turned out. He inted that thing away about as quickly as he could have managed, and still comfortably held. But, I mean, it has to be said, both of his treants were high buffs. So this one was brand new, 4 stacks. This one was 3 stacks. And obviously the Shroom is just pretty solid impact damage as well, right? So, as a result, he was just completely fine.
And that's an interesting position in the game, because 3 of the players just income king, everyone has 11 workies. So even though the P-score sort of suggests that Adami Eater have a big lead, and the Jules suggestion also does that, it's really not that obvious who's going to do better, especially now that Fine has saved up some Mythium. He could try and maybe leak Adams on wave 8. That is obviously a wave that he's not as strong on, but I think Adams would just go for the KP.
He'll have his Kingpin, right? Like,
That's
he just needs to sell
healthy. Yeah, that's a very healthy 100-stack KP.
I think that's the chonkiest Kingpin we've seen all day on the stream. 97.8 stacks on that bad boy, although it could have been higher. He does have steeds as well, right? But I think Adams is very happy with the state of this Kingpin here, and given the income send coming out from Fine here on wave 8, he can just full push now. He's going to be in a really good spot.
Yeah, and Aviator He's doing very, very well, even though he has the big wig. Look at his income, using the early game rat to create a massive income lead over his opponents, and he's just income sending every single wave. And adding the big wig to that, this looks perfectly. And look at that, the elite
Yeah,
archer,
that is just
beautiful
perfect
split
focus
tank.
there from Aviator.
Yeah. This looks extremely solid for a Damiator. This looks like a position where you're suddenly both on fire because the KP is just going to crazy push, and an Aviator has just a ton of income lead over his opponents. So Mr. Buzz and Fine now find themselves in a situation where you really need a plan. Obviously, in the early game in Legion TD2, you will sometimes, not look for opportunities as hard as you do in the mid to late game, right? You sometimes just end up income kinging a lot if you see the enemy board has no clear weak waves. If it doesn't snowball out of control, you feel like, okay, this is a game where we can just handshake, you income king, we income king, or we income, you income, we save a bit, maybe we sometimes spice it up with a brute, but it's often the case, and especially in those higher elo lobbies where people would just do that. So I think now that this sort of has been a case, but suddenly one of the teams is just so far ahead, they've just been doing it better, you need a plan. So what is, in your opinion, the best possible plan for Fine and Mr. Buzz? Is it save up and look for a weak wave and pray, sort of?
I'm
not
maybe
sure.
interested in like wave 11, but they just don't have enough Mythium for that. Like they've been sending a lot. They're even going for another income send here on 10, and they're honestly limiting their choices a bit here. Maybe they're doing something like this income on 10 into straight wave 13. That could be the best play available, but look at this. Aviator is having the game of his life right now. He has the highest workers in the lobby, and he's been hunting every wave, and he has a fully stacked big wig, and he's the highest value. Like, it just everything is going in Aviator's favor right now. He's just ahead on every metric. He's got the highest income as well, just to add insult to injury. Plus, look at his role. He has an egg. So he can take this income send now, build the egg on wave 11, and just be giga strong on wave 13, which is the next wave they're starting to look weak.
Yeah, and I mean, it's Aviator, so you know he has an egg. Like, it's not
it's
really
like hard-coded into the game, right?
Absolutely, but, I think the best case scenario for Mr. Buzz and Fine, and I think the scenario that they're sort of hoping for, is that Aviator is Cartel. But we know that isn't true.
Yeah, right.
And I think you're now like praying, okay, may he be Cartel, because that actually leaves them some opening to win this, right? But I think they've been income kinging the last couple of waves, and it's just like a slow demise. They're up there in income with the enemy, but they're just lower workies, lower value in many cases, and it just seems like it's all falling apart. Even though the game looks fairly close in workies and in value, right? Like it's there are some similarities. It's 18 to 18 on Aviator and Baz, and then obviously
but
Adams
Adams has 24 against the 16
and Fine is
on
16.
Fine. It's
Yeah,
50% more workers. It's a massive lead between those two players.
Yeah, and it's also worth considering that Aviator is saving. So it's not only that the workies and the value are slightly higher, it's also the Mythium that's being saved. And remember, there's free value in the big wig. That's 27 gold every single wave coming into Aviator's wave. And also there's an egg, and also there's a rat. So yeah, it doesn't look as good as it is in reality.
Yeah.
But I think Jules is on to Aviator here. 76%. And it certainly feels that way.
It is at least that favored, I think. Like the Jules metric, it just goes off numbers alone, so it doesn't consider things like roll power. And if we look at that roll power, we see Aviator has the eggs, of course, so he just has infinite scaling. He's getting extra gold from the bankers every single wave. Adams has boars and Hades and steeds for his late game potential. I mean, this is honestly pretty rough for the Div 1 speedrunners.
Absolutely. But if there's a saving grace, maybe there's one on Adams' side, because it feels like there's a high chance he will leak wave 13 if they go for a full send. He obviously shifts some gold here, that's 185 shifted, but I think his board really doesn't look that well. Obviously, there's a Harbinger, maybe there's another one with the steeds. Yeah, that's a fair amount of DPS, but he doesn't really have the tankage to support it. He has a sacrifice, so I wonder if there's ever a chance he sacrifices the KP, goes for like a crazy, I don't know, Hades play. What do you think is the answer if Descent comes here?
I don't
But
even
as you
think
can
that
see-
he needs to sacrifice. I think he can, yeah, with the income, he actually he
Yeah,
doesn't need to
yeah,
sacrifice
yeah.
still. I thought he might have just had enough gold straight up, but he doesn't. He would need to sacrifice something. I would maybe like get rid of a gate guard or something
Yeah,
like
yeah,
this,
yeah, yeah.
just to
S-
guarantee the
certainly.
Hades. No, but
I
he's
would-
actually just thinking he's pretty fine here. He's not feeling the pressure. He doesn't.
I mean,
need
the
to
value is
sacrifice.
nice, right?
Yeah, that's true. He's basically on value when he finishes spending, and more to the point, Aviator is plus 350.
Yeah, the fully charged Hydra, a triple bunker. By the way, a lot of damage on this wave.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's probably the reason why Fine and Mr. Buzz have not sent here. But on the other hand, look at that. Double GK going into Fine's lane. And obviously he has the Doomsday, which feels amazing, but it certainly doesn't feel amazing if it's
Yeah,
as slow
and the
as it is.
GK is getting focused, so that Doomsday did lose a lot of its upfront damage. Now it's getting onto the wave. It has killed a couple of creeps. Can it get one more? It cannot. That's a
That's it,
78% leak there on Fine. And Mr. Buzz, that's an 89% leak here. This is going to be some major king damage. Interestingly, Fake One, this is the first blood in this game, only drawn on wave 13. Very unusual so far today.
Yeah, a lot of income kinging in this game. And as I've been saying, it just seems like Aviator and Adams do it better, right?
Yeah.
It just comes down to the fact that you have a bit more workies, maybe a bit more income, maybe your board is just a tiny bit more solid.
Yeah.
But in the end, they end up in a position where they can safely send 13. They both leak their opponents, and they really aren't in danger here on wave 14. Look at that. Adams preparing another KP possibly. And also, how can you ever send 15 into the triple steed, an LD that's soon to become a Hades? Even if you manage to send, probably the best case scenario would be a Kraken and a Needler. There's so many fortified and natural tankage as well. There's just never a wave that they can leak them on. And I think Adams and Aviator, they just recent here on 15.
Yeah, and even if Adams' build would be weak to Kraken Needler, he's going to be on value. Like, he
Yeah.
is showing -8 here, but he also shifted 80 gold, so he's very fine. And Aviator is plus 505, so
He's gaining value, by the way.
he's
I
just
think
gaining value, right? He's just generating so much gold every wave. His income is the highest in the game, and he has 2 fully stacked, maybe 3 fully stacked bigwigs. So yeah, he's just getting way more gold than every other player in this game. He is pulling further and further ahead every single wave, and yet we do see this bounty hunter. I don't think he wants to upgrade it here. I think he just
No,
sells
no.
a mask, makes his Lord of Death, right?
I actually think Adams, yeah, exactly.
he's
I think he
cracking.
prepares Hellraisers. That's
Okay.
what I would do in this position. You see the value on your teammate. Like, Aviator is never leaking here. I mean, obviously, he has a lot of natural, so, okay, maybe he leaks. But if he does, how much is that? 20%? 30%?
Yeah,
A
right.
boss? A
Yeah.
4-eye, maybe? I don't think that's meaningful. So, you know that the only play for your opponent, the only out for your opponent, is to save and go 16 or even longer in a crazy world, but obviously it's not going to be this one. So Adams is just like, okay, let me prepare my hay raises for wave 16, which is probably their best wave.
Yep. And one other thing to point out, that Adamiator are already fully upgraded on the King attack and spell, so they're not feeling under pressure 16 whatsoever. As a result, they don't income King, they go for the race, the full power mercs then coming out from both. And do you know what? I think there's only going to be one winner of this race, and that is very much looking like Adamiator to me.
Place your bets. Place your bets, guys. In the chat, please place your bets. Who do you think is going to win? A double Tree of Life Canopy set on wave 16? Or just a almost full KP, another 100 mana KP, a Hades, and obviously Aviator's board, which is just value galore. By the way, this guy is 270 over.
Overvalue with good units
just
for this wave as well. I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
sure, the bigwigs are like dead value, but everything else on his board is really good on wave 16.
Yeah, so let's see if Buzz and Fine need 2 things to happen. They need to leave both of their opponents. They both need to hold. And then probably internet outage on Aviator is the win condition.
Yeah, but unfortunately, I think part 1 of that calculation has already gone wrong because they have not held. That's a 59% leak and 112 on Mr.
So
Boz.
surely they leak their opponents, right?
Surely. Or wait,
Surely.
maybe not.
Look,
Or
look.
maybe they get the shutdown. Maybe they get the shutdown. Oh, it's so hype. Oh, but wait, their king is dead. Ah.
Oh, wait, they do get a shutdown. Hold their own. Yeah, the king gets a shutdown. He goes to sleep.
He does go to sleep. The king has had enough. He's feeling old. I know the feeling all too well. And that is a 1-0 lead in favour of Adamiator, who, I mean, just look at this win probability graph. They were miles ahead from the start of the game to the end. This was pretty much a masterclass in how to play Legion TD2. We were talking about morale before we came into this series, thinking maybe Adamiator are feeling a little bit tilted, maybe on the flip side the speedrunners are feeling pretty good about themselves. Well, I guess that wasn't necessarily the case, because this was domination here from Adamiator in game number 1.
Yeah, I wouldn't really feel too good about myself after this game, because this was a blowout. And this is the worst type of scenario where you go for the handshake and you say, okay, we can match. We can also inking, push workies, and scale to the late game. And it's just not it. And I also think it's worth noticing the roles on both Mr. Buzz and Fine had like clear weak waves. I mean, Buzz has had pretty good combos with the Tree of Life and the Canopy for the early game, and also Gun with Devilfish always feels super good. I was actually kind of
really
surprised.
strong in the early game. Really strong.
Yeah, but he didn't go for it because he wanted to get the Valshroom as fast as possible and probably prepare the Tree of Life Canopy. So I think, considering Fine's role, if you look at wave 1 and then the reroll that happens on wave 9, Fine's options are really limited, extremely limited. His role is very early game heavy, and he has the wave 2, wave 3 leaks, which also sort of defeats the whole potential of an early game snowball for Fine. But let's assume this didn't happen. I think the win condition, considering the 2 roles that they have, is Fine tries to push workies early, Mr. Buzz goes for a crazy Tree of Life, Canopy, Wave 7, Wave 8 Starve, and Fine leaks one of those waves, and they go for a big 8 or 9. I think that would be the win condition, just judging on the 2 rolls that they had. But it never happened. If you look at the game, after the early leaks from Fine, he went for the save to Wave 4 for no reason, because he didn't leak his opponent, and then they just take the handshake. They just take, okay, listen, our starving has not worked out, let's income king. But at this point you're behind, so by income kinging you just throw yourself out to the mercy of a Adamiator, and they're just not going to give you an opportunity to come back to the game.
Like, it's kind of difficult to describe, but essentially what we were talking about right at the start of the cast today in the first series, where it is very common for the lower elo team to fall into the trap of starving too much and sending too many power mercenaries against the favoured team, let's say. Then they just take themselves out of the game. Well, here we kind of saw the opposite of that. We saw Mr. Buzz and Fine going to try and match them with the income king play and try and scale themselves into the late game. But they were already doing that from a position of weakness, right? Because Fine leaked pretty badly on 2, he leaked pretty badly on 3. They've just given a ton of extra gold over to the side of Adams and Aviator. And now, you're trying to match them with the income king, which I think can be a fine decision, but you're doing it from a step behind, right? So if you want to try and do that, if you want to try and stay toe-to-toe with your opponent, then you need to do that from the start of the game. And I'm really interested in that wave 2, where Fine, he went 6 workers, which I think is a decent play. I was going to say a Fine did a fine play, but could he not afford the Chain Fist in the split? Because that 20 gold unit, I think, just gives him an easy full hold against the snail. I think there's just no way he leaks if he has a split there. But without that, he leaks, what was it, 67% we saw against a single snail, and then his game just becomes really rough.
Yeah, it's in a spot where you play Oath Breaky Harpy, you always need a small Chain Fist on
Yeah.
wave 2.
Well,
Because otherwise,
Oathbreaker just needs a split in general, right? Because it's a
Yeah,
unit
yeah.
that adds way more value when it is split tanking, when it can pop off and do the
Yeah.
Unchained Rage against half of the wave for X
Yeah.
amount of seconds, then that's when the unit really shines. When it doesn't
Absolutely.
have that, when it tanks the full wave plus a snail and it just gets overwhelmed like we saw here, that's when you leak 67% to a single snail. That's when you kind of take yourself out of the game.
Yeah, but it's just like a very specific build that you see very often because those units are super good together. I mean, the Oathbreaker and the Harpy, because they cover each other's weak waves very, very well. And you just need a certain set of units to hold. So I think Fine maybe was thinking, I will not get snailed on 2. I just think that was it. And,
Yeah,
and if you
just took
get
the gamble,
punished,
right?
yeah, you just end up in a very, very rough spot.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it didn't pay off for him this time, but what I would like to see is Buzz and Fine continuing to take those risks as we go into the second game. But because otherwise I don't see them winning. You know, if they just try and play slow and steady, if they go for the robos every single wave like we saw against Drakir and Lucy, I don't see them winning those games. If they just play a lot of coin flip gaming and they take back-to-back gambles and they pay off, then I can see them taking the series. But if they just, you know, the turtle doesn't win the race in Legion, I don't think. You have to be a little bit risky. You have to be the hare sometimes.
Yeah, but I think it may also, you know, and it comes from experience, like personal experience. Obviously, I have not played a lot of Juru games in Legion TD. I maybe played 50 Juru games, maybe 70 Juru games. But I often think that it comes down to the shot calling ability, right?
Yeah.
It's often the case that certain players do not feel as strong about their calls, or maybe they don't have the capacity to call while they're thinking about their own builds and how to progress the builds into the later stages of the game. So maybe this was a case of that, where Mr. Buzz and Fine were sort of out of ideas very quickly. Oh no, we leaked early. What do we do? I don't know. Let's just income king, right? This happens very often.
Yeah, maybe that's the case. We'll have to see. Can they turn this one around as we go into game number 2?
Yeah, and right from the get-go, we see it's a venture game. Those are usually ones that sometimes end up very different from any other type of games, because there's a lot of mind games involved, especially if there's an aggressive mastermind, power-up next to it. And as we can see, Lizard Army offered Adams with his good old chaos, Mr. Buzz and Fine going for this salty run back. We have the cash out greed. And if Aviator goes for the baby chaos, which is redraw.
Interesting. He picked that as well.
Yeah.
I'm really not a fan of redraw. I actually think it's strong, right? I think it's strong. I just hate to play it. I hate to play it. And actually what I would do is, if I was in Aviator's position right now, actually is exactly what he's done. I was going to say I drop down the priestess and then I just hit reroll as many times as it takes until I hit the mask. And that's exactly what he's done here.
So redraw is a very, very interesting mastermind in many ways, because it is a mastermind that offers you sort of unlimited early game potential, because you can go for the miracle perfect units for every wave that you need them for, right? But sometimes in the mid to late game it starts being costly, and it can really mount up to you losing 30, 40, 50 Mythium and also not finding the answers that you're looking for. So let's see what happens. Aviator rolled the masks, so there's the redraw skill coming in handy. He didn't really lose that much gold.
Yeah, I think he only had to redraw twice actually to find the mask, which is really perfect there for Aviator. And not only did he find the mask, but he's found pretty good answers there for wave 10, let's say, with the Nightmare Doppelganger potential, and even with the Spectral Scallywag as well, which is basically a Graal, so he can quite easily shift for Azaria at any point, or use it to shift for Doppelganger as well if he wants to do it that way. So pretty solid reroll there from Aviator, especially clutch that he only had to pay 2 gold, I'm pretty sure, to find that unit. So really good start to the game for him.
Yeah, talking about roles, what do you think about Mr. Buzz's role? Because it seems to me like it is extremely single target focused. If you look at that, it's just a Zerker and a Halo in terms of damage. And you can see a lot of healing in that build with the Sea Dragon Seed combo, but I would certainly struggle with this a lot. Like this is a role that I would hate to play.
Well, there's some really like glaring weaknesses on Mr. Buzz's
Yeah.
role, right? Like he doesn't really have an answer for Wave 7. He doesn't
Yep.
really have an answer for Wave 9. I mean, he's got the Wanderer, but yeah, the rest of his units are all super weak there, I guess. Now, his top end is actually surprisingly strong because in the late game, Samurai Soul is a phenomenal tank and Steed Halo is very, very strong right now. So I think he can certainly do well in the late game, but his early game might be quite rough. And I think Adams might very well look to punish him with that Mimic on Wave 7. And I just don't think he can really do well against that at all.
Yeah, let's see how this game develops, but certainly setting up the expectation of Wave 7 for Mr. Buzz is important. Looking at some of the other waves, fine with a fairly slow start, but look at that, he's picked up on the worker buttons, and in the meantime, does that look like a leak on a dumps, or is this Fire Archer absolutely smurfing the shit out of Wave 3? It is.
That is a juice,
Look at that.
especially with that Sea Dragon just making sure it stays topped up. That was a
Beautiful.
juicer there from Adams, holding the 60 send with ease.
And that's a sort of a pitfall that you can sometimes fall into when you're playing Chaos, right? Not getting the perfect rules for the early game, and you sort of have to make up whatever you can with them. So having the ability to create this sort of a scenario where I would assume, and this goes to all of the challenge guys out there in the chat, I would assume there's only one positioning of the units here that holds on Wave 3. And Adam's fine, right? He makes the correct decisions in terms of both positioning, but also choosing the units that he went for. And yeah, bravo for that, because that really makes a difference if he leaked there. And now that he gets to comfortably push to 7, 8 workies with the recent now, and he's saving up on Mr. Buzz, as you've been saying. So maybe we see a 5 to 7 cent, maybe we see a straight up start to Wave 7. Yeah, very, very interesting.
Yeah. I think so. He goes for his income here, and I think that's honestly a pretty good decision because he's in a really good spot economically. So why risk it, right, by going for the all-in committal so early? But he can still very comfortably threaten Mr. Buzz on 7, right? Buzz is actually playing quite risky here, which I do like to see. He's playing 395 value on 5. Sea Dragon is amazing on this wave, so that helps.
With the Steed as well, right? It's just
especially with
such
the
an
Steed.
insane
Oh, the
combo.
Sea Dragon does not tank though.
Okay,
That's
this
not
is
ideal.
terrible. I think this could actually mean a leak. Let's
could
see how
be the
good the
difference.
Zerker does. Sorry, but yeah, this is still a ton of damage. But now the Zerker goes onto the Fiend, which means a loss of quite a bit of DPS. But
he's
still,
doing just fine. He was good
Yeah,
enough here to hold.
the
And
units
it
are
was,
just so strong here.
and it was only a Fiend after all. Meanwhile, Fine does leak, but that is a very small leak against the Robo Send from Aviator. So I think this is a pretty good result actually if you're Mr. Buzz and Fine. Mr. Buzz was saving his own Mythium. He just goes for an income send here on Wave 6 into Aviator. Aviator though, he has 200 gold. He can make the Spectral Scallywag if he wants to. He could add a Nightmare even. I mean, he can upgrade the Mask as well. He's got plenty of options here. He does go for the Mask.
Yeah, and it makes a lot of sense. You sort of want to protect your Wave 7, but at the same time, you are fairly weak here, and Buzz has been saving up for a long time. But look at that. Buzz doubles down on the Sea Dragons, and he's bailed out. Adam sends a Fiend here. If he saved up his Mythium, that would mean 120 already. That would certainly be a Mimic on 7. But even if it's not a Mimic on 7, I think a double Brooter with maybe a Lizard or a Snail could still be a very, very powerful send versus Mr. Buzz on Wave 7. In the meantime,
Oh.
Aviator doing so well.
Wait,
Oh
does
my
he get
lord,
another
that's
heal off?
split time.
No, but it's only a 1 creep leak against 180 Mythium send here. Aviator,
Yeah, massive W.
very happy with that result.
That's a massive W. Look at the positioning. Perfect as well.
Uh-huh.
And interestingly enough, no full send from Adams.
Yeah.
Good for Mr. Buzz, I suppose.
Now, he couldn't have afforded the Mimic, right? Like, tell me he didn't
Yeah.
have Mimic pre-income, because if he did, I think Mr. Boz would have demolished Aviator there with a Mimic on 6.
No, absolutely, he wouldn't have. If he doesn't send the Fiend on wave 6, he has the Mimic.
Right.
Obviously he can't know, and I think it's sort of an interesting decision, because obviously from Adams's perspective, you don't know what the role is on Mr. Buzz, and if Mr. Buzz shifts on 6, he can afford a bank on 7, which looks super good in his build, right?
Right.
With the Sea Dragon and with the Zerker. So I don't think he wanted to take the risk, especially knowing that your Chaos, you sort of want to scale. Talking about that,
Oh,
will he be able to scale? That looks like a leak to me.
this is a pretty big send. He will take out the Brute, it looks like, so at least there's that going for him. But still a decent leak there, 62% on Adams, but Mr. Buzz immediately evening the scales with a 60% leak against full income there. So a very good trade on the side of Adamiator, while both teammates full cover, it looks like, in the mid. Maybe a very small leak getting through, but no, the Poter is more than strong enough, it looks like, to tank all of this magic damage.
Okay, so we're sort of finishing the early game right now, right? Wave 7, Wave 8. We've seen a lot of incoming on both sides. Mr. Buzz now sends a Mimic, because I just wanted to ask you, what do you think is the game plan for both sides, as the game is fairly even, but it seems to me like the Mimic is not going to snack too much here. And Assyria on Aviator's board with a Hellraiser.
This is
How are we
really
feeling about
interesting now. For starters, where does the Mimic go? Does it go immediately on the Etheria, or is it going to go into the split and then wrap onto the Hellraiser? Or, I mean, that's number one. Number two is, does the Etheria target the Mimic? Because if it does and it dies super fast, then he's going to do really well. If it doesn't, he might end up leaking decently now. But having said that, the Azeria is basically going to take out every single unit of the wave before it goes down. So I think he's going to be okay. It will be a leak. The Mimic is going to chew through, or...
Oh my lord,
I mean,
this
that heal
is
is
so beautiful.
clutch. Wow. And it's only 4 gold on the Mimic as well. And meanwhile, Fine, yeah, he leaks 42% against the full income send, which is pretty rough. So, again, a very good trade in the favour of Adamiator. 2 waves in a row where they've leaked super small against a full send, while leaking their opponent pretty much the same, or even more in this case, with an income send. So they're in a pretty strong spot once again, while 1-0 in the lead in terms of the game matchup.
And let's remember, they're playing very high potential masterminds here with the redraw and with the chaos. There's so many scenarios where both of those masterminds can mean incredible things. And in the meantime, as well, an ogre sent into Mr. Buzz's lane. And honestly, looking at this board, not too hot. He would need to snipe the ogre in order to have a chance. He really doesn't have good damage for this wave. Obviously, Zerker is not that terrible because of the ramping magic damage, but it's not good either. And the halo, yeah, it's just one small halo and mediocre tankage. So let's see what happens here.
I mean, the Samurais, they're pretty good here, but the send is massive. You know, they can get overwhelmed quite quickly. And the halo,
there's just no damage.
He needs the halo to attack the ogre, and it just isn't. So he's going to go for a pretty sizable leak, I think. Fine, though, he's leaking worse, actually. 49% over there against the imps and robots. And he is on the ogre now, but is it too little, too late? No, he takes it down. Okay, that is disaster averted, because that changes the leak from being massive on the side of Mr. Boz to just 24% instead.
Yeah.
This is probably the best case scenario for him, receiving the 300,
Absolutely.
baby leaking. But that said, it is still first blood on the king in favour of Adamiator, who are, remember, 1-0 in the lead, so they just need to close this one out. They are going through to tomorrow's semis, while Mr. Buzz and Fine are going home. So they're on the ropes. What do they need to do to turn this one around?
Yeah, and that's a good question. Certainly, you know, they have not taken as much king damage as it could possibly happen in another case, in another scenario. But look at Fine's board. He has an elegant Sky Queen and a big wig that has 2 mana for damage. And aside of that, it's only tanks. He's been leaking quite a bit lately. And even though they're saving up Mythium very nicely, 320 on Fine, 280 on Mr. Buzz, the income difference is just so massive. But as I said before, it's a venture game. Those are certainly interesting in how they develop. It seems like Mr. Buzz and Fine are given a free venture if they are willing and happy to take it.
Well, they are, but Adams and Aviator, they already have a decent worker lead, and Mr. Buzz and Fine not really pushing there. Although Fine takes the Lizard Army, so not getting baited
It looks
into
like
the
wave 12,
venture.
no?
Okay. So they won't be weak on 12 then, but Adams and Aviator, they're just going for more income here as well. And talking of more income, look at that difference there in the income numbers. We have Adams and Aviator both essentially doubling the income figures of Mr. Buzz and Fine.
Yeah, and Adamas skillfully rolls a boar here
Wow.
to cover his weak wave 11 and wave 12 in case he needs to. Also, King Up's getting added. So I like the decision to go wave 12 on the side of Buzz and Fine. I think it's a glaring weakness in Aviator's build. His Hellraiser is also on Tantrum on wave 11, which is the desirable situation. But it will still not be easy to league them. And remember, Aviator has the potential to redraw and try to look for answers for the upcoming wave. Although, I'm not sure if the best answer isn't already on the table, right? If the Azir just gets straight up buffed with another Desert Pilgrim, and
Yeah,
sorry,
it's just going to be
the
invincible, right? Like, it has one Chieftain buff already, it's going to have another one, and it has Protector. The thing is just unkillable, man. I mean, sure, we get this double Ogre Mole Send coming out from Mr. Buzz, and the Lizards, of course, from the Lizard Army, but Aviator, I think he's just going to be completely fine here. He does not go for the Chieftain upgrade. He rather wants some more tank value with this King Claw, which I think is a fine choice.
Yes, definitely.
But I mean, this thing is just going to live forever, right? And if it tanks the entire left side, which I think it will, then it's just not going to die. Everything on the left side effectively does 0 damage, and I think Aviator can just hold. Adams does have this Red Eyes here, but is kind of lacking in damage otherwise. He's got the triple Disciple, but there's no Starcaller there to buff the mana regen. But he probably expects a leak on Adams. I don't think it will be terrible. But the Azirio is doing exactly what it needs to do. It's surviving against the left side. It does go down now, though. Didn't get full value out of that heal. As a result, 118% leak on Aviator, 25 Chord Shutdown. And a decent leak here, 76% leak on Adams as well. But he basically cleared the entire wave, leaking only this end.
So, Fine and Mr. Buzz managed to deny Venture. They make use of their Lizard Army on wave 12. They get 2 leaks, they get the shutdown of Aviator, they get some King damage. It's not the worst situation, but still, if you look at the value for Adams, for Aviator,
wow,
and if you look at their income, right, it's just something that cannot be ignored. And remember, they're also scaling extremely hard with the Chaos and the redraw, maybe a bit less.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is certainly favored towards a Damiator, albeit not unwinnable for Buzz and Fine. I think
it's certainly not unwinnable. I think what would have been unwinnable is if Aviator just fully held there on wave 12. Then I think this Div 1 speedrunners could just FF, right? They could just straight up say, we've had enough, this one's done so. But the fact that they did manage to leak Aviator and claim that shutdown gold as well does put them in, you know, not a great spot, but at least the game is looking kind of even now. The one downside to Lizard Army, and I really hate this part about the spell, is that it's just a free 72 gold for your opponent on, like, in this exact scenario where you send on 12, you're just giving them gold for free on wave 13, right? I think that's a massive downside to the spell.
Yeah, honestly, if I can be, like, a tiny teeny bit toxic here, I absolutely hate the fact that Lizard Army gives gold to the team that's killing the lizards. I think that the only buff that this power up needs is it doesn't grant gold when it gets killed. Then the play rate will be so much.
Now, see, that's an interesting one, right? Because obviously that's a straight up buff to the power of the spell, but it also makes it impossible to do things like fake Lizard Army, right?
Yeah, but okay.
So it takes away the mind games aspect of the spell.
Yeah, but how often is that really like valid? How many games when you take Lizard Army is that going to be like? 1 in How many games does that find?
I think it used to be a thing way more than it is now. Now that
Yeah,
with things
yeah,
like
yeah.
the recommended value being so visible and stuff like that, it really makes it obvious that okay, they're just faking. But
Yeah.
it used to be pretty common actually in high elo play. It clearly less common these days, but yeah.
Yeah, that's actually true. I remember when I was starting to play LTD2, or like coming back to the game after trying it in 2018. It actually was very popular, or like much more popular than it is right now. I'm sort of sad though that Aviator is not going for the steeds, right? Like he
Oh.
has redraw, he has double chieftain, he also has an ocean temple. Like just reroll for steeds, bro. Just show
Yeah.
us that you're a skilled player.
Well, he did re-roll a couple of times already because he was looking for something there for wave 12. He found the King Claw. But yeah, he probably could just find the Steed and then he basically has Exodia, right? But what I want to point
Yeah,
out is
that's
that
Exodia.
Adam's very skillfully Chaos rolled the Honeyflower here. Like,
Yeah.
clearly the next send is coming on 16, so we'll just roll the perfect unit then, why not?
And it sucks so hard for Fine and Mr. Buzz because otherwise, Adam's 16 looked really rough with
Yeah.
the red eyes already being completed, and now suddenly he finds 4 damn god flowers,
Yeah.
and that allows them to absolutely be sure that they're holding here, and they're also sending Mr. Buzz and Fine saving Penny.
Yeah,
that
do,
is
do you
sort
know
of
what?
crazy
I
to me.
think they probably were planning 16. I put money on it actually, but once they saw
Yeah.
these flowers coming out from Adams, they realized
You just
okay,
have to save.
we have to we have to skip. We can't. We're not going to leak Adams on 16 because he has no split essentially. He's pulling the wave up here with the boar, so those honey flowers get full value, and he's just going to do super well. But the question is, can they afford this skip? Because Fine is undervalue, Mr. Boz is undervalue, and they're not looking amazing this wave. Okay, actually Fine might do pretty good here. He's
Yeah.
got good tanks with the Fatalizers and the White Mane. He's got good damage with the Sky Queens.
Yeah.
But Mr. Buzz looks pretty weak here, I think.
So I think if we were to try and visualize what the players are thinking right now, I think Fine and Mr. Buzz we're planning to send 16 as you're saying, but they know that it's a losing play after they see the flowers. Because if you send here, you know that Adams is holding, or if he's leaking, that's going to be a meaningless leak. So I think obviously they know that they will leak here. They're
Yeah.
good enough players to know that they're leaking here and that that descent is probably coming. They just finish AoE and pray that they live, and then they pray that they'll have enough Mythium to look for a one-shot wave. And that would be maybe 19 looking at the boards.
It kind of has to be 19, right? Like,
Yeah,
they know
but I'm not
Adams is
sure if they get
chaos.
there. Because 17, 18.
Well,
I mean,
18,
Buzz
they're
is
actually
actually
both super
good.
strong,
Oh, yeah,
right?
yeah.
Because
Fine has Fatalizers as well. I forgot
Yeah.
about that. So,
They-
yeah,
they
I think
both- They
19.
both actually have the Fatalizers. We've got the Steed
Yeah.
Halo here for Buzz. We've got... this game is starting to look pretty spicy, my friend.
Yeah.
Maybe they can just take this on 19.
As I said, this was the only out. Once you see the flowers, you know that if you go 16, you just agree to a losing play. You just think, okay, if we send, maybe we hold, or maybe you income king. But that just widens the gap. That just lets Aviator and Adamus get even further further ahead. Sorry. So I think I like the decision. Right? It's not an easy decision to make. It definitely doesn't feel good, but it's a good decision. I think it's the only decision that wins you the game. Is
Yeah.
how I'll put it.
Yeah. So we'll have to see if they go for it. One, we'll have to see whether Aviator and Adams go for a send here on 18 if they're feeling under the pressure. And they might, because it does look like a pro league here from Boz. But no, Boz and Fine do decide to send here on wave 18 into the chieftain buffed Protector's area of Aviator,
Okay, that's
who has
Jover, right?
the double Fatalizer himself, by the way. Adams, though, he has Chaos rolled nothing for this wave, which is probably the first time I've ever seen this guy not roll the perfect unit. He is on value, though.
Yeah, that's going to be the Fatalizer. I suppose a Sea Dragon upgrade. I guess the Fatalizer should also get an APS or something. I think those are his best options here. A gun is interesting.
A gun is not the option, but maybe he's actually thinking it's going to be that wave 19 that we talked about, right? So it does look like he is building for wave 19, and that may very well bite him, but his value is very strong here. He's
Yeah.
minus 200, which is
I know-
basically nothing.
His teammate is
Aviator...
insane here.
Mhm.
That's Aviator's best wave by far.
Yeah.
So let's see if this needs to be a miracle for Mr. Bazenfine. This needs to work, otherwise it's game over, Penny.
Well, they need to
So-
hold their own sends as well, right? Because these are not
Oh,
tiny
yeah.
sends. There's needlers and robots all over in these lanes, but I really want to keep eyes on here. This Azeria, did it not tank very much? Because it's kind of full HP over there, but it looks like it doesn't matter. That's an easy hold there from Aviator. It's not even remotely close. It's an easy hold for Adams as well, and I think this game is over. It doesn't even matter. So Boz and Fine, they both hold as well, but this was their committal play, and it did not work.
So, looking at the position that they were in, we both agreed 19 is the only out that you have.
Yeah.
Once you decide not to send 16, you need to play it towards your
Yeah.
only win condition, which is wave 19. And going 18 is the same as going 16. So why did you skip 16 if you end up going on Aviator's best wave?
I know, like they just need to risk it.
I
And
don't know, man.
Don't get me wrong, it would have been a risk for them to skip 18.
Oh yeah, for sure, for sure.
But they had the roll quality, they had the Fatalizers, they had the Hades, they had the Halo. You just have to trust that you can hold Ascend on your strongest wave and then actually pose a threat against the enemies on their weakest wave 19, right? But they didn't take that angle, and as a result, I just don't think they have another out left in this game.
Yeah, it's what I'm trying to say is that it's inconsistent with their previous decision.
Exactly.
They made a decision in order to play for a win rather than, let's say, not lose, which is we try to live 16 or like not leak 16. But they played to win, and then they do something totally opposite. And look at that. They're barely clearing Noscent or actually leaking to Noscent.
Yeah.
And that's, as depressing as it is, it's just a consequence of their own decisions. And also worth noticing, Baz pushed a lot after wave 16. So maybe if they push just a tiny bit less and go for the long save to 19, they stand a chance. And now, look at the values, look at incomes. It's just absolutely over.
They have to send here on 20, right? Do they?
I think they skip. It's once they-
Everybody saves. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it's the same decision as previously. Both of your roles are basically created for this wave. The Halos, the Fatalizers, they're made to live here. And I like the call, but it's just look at the values, Penny. I know
Yeah.
that you like to do so please do.
Yeah, the Power Score Aviator is on a 200 gold shutdown here on wave 20. That's how far ahead he is. Adam's not far,
Casual,
far
200
behind,
gold
150 gold shutdown. And Fine is all the way down here. He's 1,500 Power Score lower than Aviator, who's on top of the table. Yeah, things are just looking very, very rough. Honestly, Fake One, I think they had a very good chance if they just held their nerve and went wave 19. Now, I mean, they are holding their nerve now. They didn't go for Ascend here on 20, but I just think they lose the race on 21.
Yeah, it certainly looks that way, but listen, Penny, miracles happen, right? They sometimes do happen.
Well, let's
So
see.
Let's see if this is one of them.
Both-
Let's see if this is one of them.
Both sides are sending their Mythium. We have the Mammoth Sends coming out from all four players. The problem is that Adams and Aviator, they are just way closer to recommended value compared to their opponents, and the Sends are not even that much smaller, honestly. It's just a reflection of the state of the economy in this game, that they can afford to be this close to value whilst also sending a fairly equivalent amount of Mythium. I don't see the speedrunners taking this race here on 21, my friend.
Yeah, it certainly looks improbable, but I don't know. I don't want to set an expectation for Baz and Fine to win. It really looks grim for them. But if we can appreciate something, fine, putting double white main around one of the Fatalizers.
Oh, yes.
Extremely-
That is such a strong Fatalizer, actually. It's
extremely
basically
potent.
invincible.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's see. The Sends come out. The bosses start taking damage. And we can already see Mr. Boss is really struggling. His tank line is gone in a matter of seconds. And the wave is now starting to hit on the Halos, on the Hades.
Yeah, and
Basically
similar
did already.
story in Fine's lane as
By the
well,
way,
I'm afraid.
Adams is dying very quickly.
He is,
but-
but Aviator is stalling more than long enough. So this will be
Yep.
another 2-0, it looks like, with Adamiator guaranteed their spot in tomorrow's semi-final. Div 1 speedrunners, they gave it a good shot. They did not hold their nerve there on Wave 18, and they have now paid the price as Adamiator take the victory here in game number 2.
Yeah, that's a good game from Adamir. I think they had a few decisions where maybe it could have been hard to make him on the spot, when to skip, when to send, but I think in the end they ended up making the good decisions. I really liked how they approached the post-10 gameplay, where they just income, they take the leak on 12, but they recognize 16, that's our wave, Adams skillfully rolls the flowers. There was just nothing to be done.
Yeah, I feel like Boz and Fine almost certainly had the plan to send there on 16, and then they just changed their plan once they saw the flower. The problem was, as we see here, they could not afford to change their plan, right? They leak 56 and 85%, they take a bunch of king damage there on wave 16, and even after this, they still had a chance to win the game if they could only have skipped wave 18 and sent here on 19. They just needed to trust in the strength of their rolls, right? I mean, what difference would it have made if Boz didn't send his income here? Maybe he can't afford to add this Berserker here in the split, which I don't think makes a massive difference. And maybe, like, likewise in
he also could have
lane.
pushed less, right? He just could have pushed 4 less workies, because he actually pushed quite a bit between wave 16 and wave 17.
Yeah, he went from 22 to 40.
Workies.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you can just push 4 less, and you also add the same Berserker, and you don't have to really care about that. So, yeah, it's just unfortunate decisions, but to be fair, I think Fine and Mr. Boss must have been mega tilted after they seen the flowers. I mean, I know I would be so.
Yeah. Because he's just looking so weak on 16. If you look at his
And
wave
it's also
14
AV.
board, he looks like terrible on 16, and Aviator looks pretty weak as well, right? And then he just goes, you know what, I'm Chaos, here's the flowers, let's go. Death caps for 16, easy hold, what a skilled player, GG.
Yeah, certainly. And as I'm saying, it's the worst wave by far for both Aviator and Adams. So it's pretty much your only win condition. So you're kind of having the good feeling, oh, okay, we're making it to 16, it looks doable, it looks winnable. And then, haha, I roll flowers, see ya nerds.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
I mean, it do be like that sometimes.
It do be like that sometimes, and what really can you say about it other than GG fuck Chaos, you know? Like, it's just how it goes when you high roll the perfect unit for the perfect wave, you win the game, you know? Funny about that, who would have thought?
You know, a part of me died inside when you say fuck, because I've worked in a television for years, and you can't swear. You can't swear, because there can be if obviously it's very unusual that will happen, but you could get fined for like 500,000 PLN, which is like over 100,000 pounds. So I was like, what has this guy done?
Luckily not on TV.
Yeah,
so I think we're fine.
luckily, like, that was for a while, like for a second, just an
had a little
instinct.
panic there.
Yeah. What is he doing?
See, guys, that's the diff. Pro caster versus amateur caster doesn't say the F bomb.
Yeah, now I can freely do it. Let's just say it together, fuck Chaos.
Fuck Chaos, man. But, you know, I think fair play to the Div 1 speedrunners there. They did actually
Absolutely.
put up a decent fight against the Damiator, who are, after all, last month's tournament winners. So they were the massive underdogs. They were kind of expected to lose the series, but they still put up a pretty good fight there. They could, I think, quite easily have won game number 2 if they'd made slightly different decisions. And I was just looking actually at the worker situation there on the side of Fine and Buzz. And like you said, Mr. Buzz, he did push hard. He went from 22 to 40 workers. But Fine, he basically pushed, 3 workers? He went from 21 to 25, which was...
And that was consistent with the 19 line, right?
Right,
When I saw that, I was like, okay, they're definitely recognizing that 19 is now the wave that they need to send. And obviously, Adams probably rolls boars or something, but it's just something you need to be okay with. And then they send it here. I'm like, okay, then why don't you push? So to me, it just seems we signed up at the last day. We don't really have a good communication. We don't really have a good synergy together. And we make some split calls, or maybe we're just not consistent in what we want to do. But anyway, as you've been saying, Buzz and Fine, fair game to them. They took a game of Drakir and Lucy, which I already think is a fair achievement in its own. And me, I love narratives. I've always loved narratives. I love pushing narratives. So I'm just happy that Adamiator go to day 2 and they have a chance to defend their title, which is always just a tiny bit more spice than it otherwise would have been.
Yeah. I mean, for sure, they can be proud of the way they played today. I think they damn near took a game off Adamiator there at the end. Probably would have done with very slightly different decisions in the mid to late game. Do you know what? I think they probably just panicked when Mr. Buzz leaked to the no send on 17. They probably just thought, maybe we're weaker than we thought we were. But do you know why Mr. Buzz pro leaked on 17? Is because he full built for 18. So despite the fact that he seemed weak on 17, he was actually giga strong on wave 18. They just needed to trust in their builds a little bit more, trust in the heart of the cards, and they may well have found a way to victory here. Unfortunately, it didn't go that way. We did get the 2-0 there from Adamiator, and I think that means we probably have tomorrow's semi-finals all lined up.
We should, right?
Check that. We should. And yes, so we've got the result from the other side of the bracket. Abraceit did win 2-1 over Quack Attack, so they get through their last chance match in Group A, and we've just seen Adamiator take the last chance match in Group B, which means tomorrow's semi-finals will be Atrocity and In the Hole facing off against Adamiator, and the other semi-final will be Abraceit facing off against Drakir and Lucy. That's a very, very spicy one.
And Drakir and Lucy, winning the game versus Aviator 2-0, and they feel so good. And now they look at the bracket and they're like, wait, but we're first seed. Why are we playing King Dans and Witherson? That certainly doesn't feel good, especially given the track record recently. This is going to be an insane matchup and a match worthy of a final, right? We've seen so many finals between Drak and Lucy and King and Wither, and those games are always so good. I honestly love them, and since I've been in this community for a year and a half, maybe a bit less than 2 years. So for me, this is the El Clasico. I love the games between Drak and Lucy and King and Wither, so I can't wait. I think this is going to be an absolute banger set of matches.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's become really common lately, that the semi-final matches are already at the very, very high caliber of Legion gameplay. Because there does seem to be 3 or 4 teams that are really dominating the scene at the moment. And that means that's great, but it also means as a byproduct that your semi-final is already going to mean one of those teams has to get knocked out, right? So you kind of feel bad for whichever team it is that goes out in the semi-final, but that's just how competitive gaming works, right? So it's going to be exciting to watch, and I think that's going to be a super fun series. Drakir and Lucy versus King Dans and Witherson. It's going to be amazing. So tomorrow's games I'm really, really excited for. But I just wanted to kind of wrap up the stream today by saying we've had some really good games already today. They've been really exciting, back and forth. We've seen a couple of upsets there with Fine and Buzz taking the game off Drakir and Lucy. And then the 2-0 against the Damiator. I really didn't expect that one. Drakir and Lucy played that one phenomenally well, it has to be said.
That was beautiful.
But really what I wanted to say is a massive thank you to you, Fake One, as my co-caster, because this has been a really, really enjoyable stream for me. I know I've seen a bunch of positive feedback for you in the stream chat, so maybe, look, I don't want to get your hopes up or anything, but you might have a future in casting after all, my friend.
Oh, yeah, it seems like it's something that I should explore,
maybe,
right?
Maybe look into it.
Just think about it.
Maybe look into that one. You've got a talent for it.
Yeah, and I'll also add to that, on the top of my qualities, which is basically talking to a microphone, and that's pretty much it. I also won against the Doomsday Duo just before we started today.
Nice.
So, wait, let me see who was facing them in the matches. So, Abraceit and Quack Attack. You don't have to thank me. I set them up nicely for you. I just primed them up for the whooping that you served them, judging by the results. But yeah, jokes aside, thank you very much. It was very enjoyable, and this was the first cast that I've done in almost 5 months. So I was a bit afraid I would be rusty since my retirement, but
you seemed the opportunity. You did okay. You were all right.
Thank you very, very much. Yeah, but it was very enjoyable. So if you ever need a caster, give me a call.
Yeah, man, that's awesome. That's awesome. I don't know if I would be able to return the favor on a league stream, though. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I can do a coaching session with you. I think it would be very, very interesting content to all the Legion TD to enjoyers out there to see Pennywise struggle versus intermediate bots or whatever.
Let's see. Maybe I'll take you up on that, but no, I don't know. Hey, mate, this has been an awesome cast. Thank you really, really much for joining me. It's been really good fun. Massive shout outs to all the usual, the tournament helpers for setting things up behind the scenes, Auto Attack Games, and of course, everybody who played. I hope you've all enjoyed the games and had a really fun day today. That's what it's all about. And Twitch chat, hope you enjoyed the show. I know I've enjoyed casting it. Whatever happens though, make sure you are back tomorrow because we are going to have some really, really exciting semi-finals and of course the grand finals after that. So tomorrow's going to be a banger, guys. Make sure you're here. Any final words from you, my friend?
Yeah, ditch Easter, come to the stream tomorrow.
I'm perfect. Really good advice there. Really, really good advice there. Guys, you heard it here first. Ditch Easter, watch Legion. Let's go. Tomorrow, same time. See you here. Goodbye.